Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, my Karen wife demands I give my settlement money to her parents. 2 years ago, I suffered an accident at work and recently reached an agreement with the company. It was a huge amount. For example purposes, and to make it clear, these are not the real values. I received $100,000. I decided to divide it as follows: $30,000 for me, $30,000 for my wife, $25,000 for emergencies, and $15,000 for my parents. I'm the main breadwinner at home, and my wife and I split the bills 25-75. I don't know if this is important. Well, my wife wants me to divide the money I'm going to give to my parents in half and share it with my in-laws because it's money that would help them too. I refused, saying that this is money that is up to me to decide how to use it, and that if she wants to help her parents, she's free to use her own as she wants to. To be clear, her parents are financially stable, and my parents have absurd expenses because my father has several health problems, and basically this money would cover a year or two of his medicine. They're struggling financially even with my help monthly. She said that this money should be a joint decision and that I was being selfish in deciding its destination without listening to her. Reddit, am I the jerk? Extra, she and I are financially stable, childless, and this money is not needed to pay our expenses, so it will be used for other things. Not the jerk, but as a former insurance adjuster, I would assume that if you're not committing insurance fraud, but getting a large settlement, that you actually have some kind of substantial injuries which might require some sort of follow-up care in the future, even if it doesn't seem like it now. In most cases, this is financial settlement. You're not getting more regardless of what might develop in the future. My vote? Don't give any of it away. Do the smart thing and put it in savings or an investment account. You're the jerk to yourself. That's blood money, not fun money. It's money to make up for your lost earning potential and any potential hospital bills as a result of that accident. I hope for your sake you have thought about your long-term financial position, including your new extra costs and loss of earning potential. Well, what do you think? Should OP divide the money with his in-laws or not? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for ending a family naming tradition? My family has always had this tradition where the firstborn, after the loss of someone in the family, gets the late family member's name as their middle name. My sister and I both have those middle names. Hers is Patricia, after a cousin of our mom's, and mine is Denise, after my dad's aunt. Almost a year ago, my sister lost her baby, Philip. He was the last family member we lost, and it was a huge blow to our family. I found out I was pregnant a few months ago. I waited a while to tell anyone, and my sister was the first person we told, privately. When I told her, she said it would be nice to have some positive news to focus on, and she wanted me to continue the tradition our family keeps and give my baby, if a boy, the middle name Philip. She was so happy about the idea. It surprised me a lot. I would have figured she would not be okay with it, but she wanted it. The problem is, my husband and I do not want to continue with the tradition. We do not want to give our son the middle name Philip. The name isn't one either of us likes or would ever pick ourselves. We have not announced the gender of our baby yet, but my husband and I know that we're expecting a boy. My family was saying how amazing it would be if my baby is a boy and Philip's name can be carried on. I suggested they wait until we announce the gender and the name before jumping to conclusions. They asked why, and I said we were thinking of not continuing the tradition. My family, and by that my parents mostly, were really upset. My sister was the worst though. She asked why I wouldn't want to honor Philip and why it was him the tradition was being broken on. She asked if I saw him as meaning so little, and I said no, of course not. Then she asked if it was his name, and we didn't like it. She said she really hoped it wasn't that. I said we just didn't feel like the tradition was something that we wanted to continue. The decision has brought up a lot of bad feelings, and my sister is especially angry and thinks I'm being insensitive and showing how little I care for my nephew. I feel terrible. She's so angry at me, and my parents are unhappy as well. My husband hates them for putting this pressure on us. He said we should be allowed to name our son whatever we want to, and we should not be obligated to use a certain name. I never wanted to be a jerk, but my family believes I am. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You and your husband have the right to name your kid whatever you want. However, your family also has the right to be heard. Not only is this a tradition, but it's a tradition that honors people the family has lost. Keep in mind how rarely a middle name is actually used. Is this something you're willing to create a fight over? As you say, your husband hates your family for putting so much pressure on the name. OP, I wish it wouldn't be a fight, but I also know my husband would be unhappy if we use the name just to keep my family happy. We have both also considered if someone else in the family passes before we have a second and then we're obligated to keep doing it. Not the jerk. It may be a tradition for your family, but it's not for your partner. This baby is both yours and your partner's, so it's up to both of you how you go about naming them. I understand your family's feelings, but these expectations that someone else who had nothing to do with deciding these traditions will just go along with it also seem too one-sided. Well, what do you think? Should OP continue the naming tradition or not? Please let us know. Sometimes you have overbearing families and you gotta tell them to buzz off. This is between you and your husband. Am I the jerk for refusing to take in my sister's kids after her partner had a stroke so that I can go on my planned vacation? My sister, 30 female, called me, 26 female, yesterday morning to tell me that her partner, who's 45, had been rushed to the hospital. She was in hysterics and I stayed on the phone with her until she was able to make it to the hospital. She works and her partner stays home with the kids. I do believe he's on some sort of disability or unemployment benefit though. Together they have 3 kids who are 7, 5, and 2. Here's some background on me and my sister. We had actually not spoken for almost an entire year before her most recent call to me. We really have a strained relationship starting from our childhood, which was exacerbated by our parents. I'll be honest in saying that my parents always favored me and labeled my sister as a problem child. Since her teens, she's been making really poor life choices and doing things she shouldn't be. She graduated high school but dropped out of community college. Our strict, traditional Asian parents shunned her from their lives after she dropped out of college. They effectively disowned her and pretend that they never had an older daughter. My parents haven't spoken a word to her in almost a decade, and they have never met their grandkids. For the last decade, I tried to maintain a positive relationship with my sister, but she's betrayed my trust too many times to count, borrowing money and never returning it, stealing my items and pawning or selling them, bringing me into unnecessary drama in her life, etc. To be honest, I've been trying to distance myself from her for the last 3 to 4 years since she's caused me nothing but pain, stress, and suffering. Then last night, she called me again to let me know that her partner had suffered a severe stroke and had emergency surgery. The doctors say they are still very unsure of his prognosis. She then begged me to take in her kids for the time being, saying how she can't afford any childcare and that she'll lose both her jobs if she's forced to stay with the kids. Now here's the thing. Me and my boyfriend's 5-year anniversary is coming up. We've already bought tickets, requested paid time off, and made accommodations for a 2-week trip to Europe starting this Friday. The total trip, including airfare, cost us $18,000, most of which is non-refundable. I told my sister I'd call her back and let her know after I spoke with my boyfriend. He said it was my choice completely. I decided that I wanted to go on our anniversary trip, which I had been looking forward to for a full year. I called my sister back and told her that I couldn't because of our trip. She started sobbing over the phone and lashed out at me, calling me cruel and selfish. She said that we could afford to just rebook our vacation and we didn't need that money back, but she was going to lose her job and her kids if she couldn't find someone to take them in. It was a really tough situation, but I stuck with my decision. It's been almost a day since our call, and I won't lie, I do feel a lot of guilt. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Normally in this situation, you would be the bad guy. However, with her not talking to you for a year, plus all the past history of the things she's done, I understand the decision you made. She's trying to drop all the consequences of her poor life decisions in your lap, and it's just not fair. I understand the guilt, but she wore you out and used up whatever sisterly feeling you had for her with all of her BS. Totally overused phrase, but particularly apt here. You can't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. This is basically asking if you should waste $18,000 and 2 weeks of paid time off to help someone who's stolen from you in the past. The answer is no. While the emergency isn't your sister's fault, burning her bridge with you certainly was. She likely has other people who she can ask for help. And even if you wanted to assist, it would be more effective to pay for a babysitter than to waste the trip. It's not like being a blood relation changes anything, since from what you're saying, you'd basically been a stranger to the kids anyway. No difference in just hiring an actual babysitter. Am I the jerk for being upset about debt my girlfriend took on to help her family? I'm 33, male. My girlfriend, who's also 33, and I have been together for 1 year, and we recently started talking about our financial situations and preparation for marriage in the future. I found out that my girlfriend has a $600,000 mortgage under her name for the family home where her and her family currently live. She co-owns the home with her brother, and their family has lived there for the past 8 years. The payments for the mortgage and all other bills are paid by everyone living there, so my girlfriend only contributes about a quarter of her income to paying the loan. There are 22 years left on the mortgage, and she let me know that the plan is that they would not be selling the home once we got married, and she would move out of it, while the mortgage and bills will then be paid by her family, who will continue living there. Her parents are both older, and her mother has a disability, so she let me know that her brother and her bought the house to help their parents have a secure place to live, and this house is important to keep for her family's well-being. My girlfriend has no other debts aside from this mortgage, and she earns a six-figure salary, more than I do. She has mentioned that she's willing to work a second part-time job to help us buy our own home in the future if needed, and she also has an emergency savings, investments, and other savings to help with a future down payment. She plans to continue getting salary increases and is very hardworking and ambitious, and I'm worried about the mortgage in her name. This is making me reconsider the relationship. Am I the jerk for being upset about this? Look, if you love her and she loves you, forget about money. It comes and it goes. You both can make more to cover bills. If she makes you happy, forget about money. She's trying to help her parents. Her intentions are good. She's a keeper. OP. I know, but I always wanted an expensive house, and I don't think I can get that with her. So why shouldn't I get my $1 million home? No, I'm not a sociopath. I just always wanted a $1 million home. So why should I sacrifice that? If I leave, I might find another woman who doesn't have debt that I can achieve my dream with. My boyfriend, 33 male, posted about wanting to dump me, 33 female, for debt that I took on to help my family. Update. As you can tell, I found his post and I've broken things off with him. I wanted to post an update to let you all know. Reading his post was one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through, and this situation has caused me a lot of anxiety and worry, but I'm glad I found out. I worry that I may not ever find a partner willing to stick it out with me because of my situation, but I know I have to keep going. I'll keep working hard and hoping that I'll find someone who won't ask me to compromise my values to make him happy. Why shouldn't you get $1 million home? Because you can't afford it, OP. It doesn't even seem like he can afford the $600,000 house that his girlfriend's family lives in, on his own. His eyes aren't matching his wallet. Also, what even is $1 million house? In some cities, that's a 2-bedroom with a yard. In others, it's maybe a place with a pool. But $1 million house doesn't offer much clarity. Entitled ex-landlord demands I leave behind the washer and dryer that I paid for. So for the past 2 years, I, 25 male, lived in a small apartment building. The apartment didn't have a laundry room for the building when I moved in, but did come with hookups for a washer and a dryer in the apartment. So I bought them myself because I work for a wildlife sanctuary and I get pretty dirty during my work. Just the other day, I had to chase down and wrestle one of our wild boars, Bacon. We didn't name him that, he came with that name, who loves to escape his pen and thinks it's funny to play chase. I got me completely dirty. I was covered in grass stains and mud, so I very much needed them. My boyfriend and I just got engaged, and since my lease was up, I moved into his house with him. I finished moving everything out of my old apartment yesterday, and I thought nothing about taking my washer and dryer with me as I had bought them. My boyfriend had some, but they were old and kept breaking down and were costing too much to have fixed. Well, I woke up this morning to multiple missed calls from my old landlord. I left my phone number and new address in case any mail was delivered to my old place. I called him back, and he asked me why the washer and dryer were gone. I explained that I took them with me. He started freaking out, saying that he had put that the place had a washer and dryer in the ad for the place. Apparently, I have raised the rent due to them. He started demanding I bring them back because the new clients he has set up to move in had already signed the lease, are not interested in a place without them. Even threatened to call the police if I don't bring them back. I got angry and told him that I would do no such thing, reminding him that they belonged to me. I bought them, and I still had the receipts from when I bought them, as well as text messages from him when I moved, explaining that I was buying them myself. He again threatens to call the police. I told him to do it and see what happened and hung up at that point. Personally, I don't think I'm in the wrong. I bought them and they weren't cheap, so I feel I have the right to take them with me. My boyfriend is on my side, but today, my coworkers said they think I'm the jerk for not telling the landlord I was taking them. In my opinion, that should have been obvious. I paid for them. Why would I leave them? Well, my landlord went through with calling the police because the next day they showed up. Honestly, nothing really noteworthy happened. I explained to them what was going on and I showed them the receipt for the washer and dryer as well as the text from the landlord I had from when I told him I was buying them. The cops took my statement and they left. My boyfriend's father is a lawyer and he's going to be contacting my landlord and sorting everything out. He advised me to not respond to the landlord anymore for the time being. Yeah, you're good. You bought it. He's demanding you leave your stuff. It's no different than demanding you leave your TV or shampoo. He's off his top if he thinks he's gonna get it. Wedding party, assault charges, and a DUI for the mother of the groom. I own a small 16-room motel with my wife. It has an attached 3-bedroom house which we live in, and aside from our 4 housekeepers, we do everything here. We have put a lot of work into renovating the place, and over the last 6 years have done a lot of improvements, which has resulted in us being successful enough that I quit my day job and we both do this full-time now. As a result, we take a lot of pride in our place, and being that it's also our home, don't put up with any BS. We each take turns doing all the guest interactions, manning the front desk, and follow a schedule. Much earlier in the year, my wife spoke with someone representing the wedding party. I can only assume the bride, but I honestly don't remember. We've learned that it's bad for business to allow wedding parties to book off blocks of rooms on the assumption that guests will call and reserve them. They wound up booking 7 rooms. The entire time they were completely disorganized, didn't know the dates, didn't know how many people, didn't know how many rooms they wanted. They called to make reservations, but honestly they had not put any thought into it beforehand, so just taking the reservations was a huge pain. We pride ourselves on our top-notch customer service, and my wife helped them get everything figured out regardless, and made sure they were sent email confirmations for everything. About 2 months later, they called and canceled 2 rooms, which was fine. We had ton of notice, so we canceled them and emailed the confirmation. Check-in day arrives, and of course, they show up around 11:30 a.m. Check-in is at 3, without calling ahead or arranging an early check-in. We were fully occupied the night before, and cleaning was underway, but nowhere near ready for them to check into their 5 rooms. I was working the front desk that day, so asked the housekeepers to focus on the wedding rooms and work to get them ready as soon as possible, again because customer service. As expected, they are completely disorganized, don't know who gets what room, and expect me to just figure it out. I ultimately did figure things out, but then they mentioned their 6th room. I review everything and only see 5 booked, and double and triple check everything, and advise they only have 5 because they canceled 2. Immediately, the father of the bride is on my case because he claims it was only supposed to be 1 room canceled. So I ask for some sort of confirmation or anything to show me a mistake was made. Of course, they can't provide anything, and I'm playing a bit dumb because I'm the one who took the call to cancel 2 rooms and can see the confirmation email we sent them clearly and offer to print out a copy for them. After some back and forth, they advise they will just book another room elsewhere because I'm fully booked that night. I even offered to pay for it if they can provide some sort of documentation that only 1 room was canceled, knowing full well that they can't. It took about 1.5 hours to get them checked in fully, and this meant their rooms were all clean by the time the nightmare check-in was complete. So I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking, okay, the headache is over. It's wedding party, so obviously my fun is just beginning. Being a small family-operated motel, we don't have a 24-hour front desk, and that night it closed at 11. As mentioned above, we live on site, so if there's an emergency, lockout, etc., you can still ring a doorbell at the office and someone is still able to help out. At 12:30, I'm about to head to bed when I see 2 clearly intoxicated people I don't recognize staggering up the office on the cameras. All I could think was, oh no, you better not be ringing my doorbell at 12:30 for some stupid crap. Of course, they start ringing it repeatedly until I'm able to get to the office and open the door. They inform me that they are wedding guests, but not part of the party who had rooms reserved. They need to get into the mother of the groom's room right now and demand I give them keys. These people were not polite, they were aggressive and extremely rude. I stay cool and politely and calmly explain I cannot just give out keys to my guests' rooms to random people. They double down and start getting very rude and aggressive, calling me stupid. It's really important, blah blah blah, and they tell me that they're there to take some purses. At this point, I laughed and said there's no way I'm giving out keys to some random drunk jerks who clearly intend to steal from my guests. Get off my property or I'm calling the police. This turns into them shouting and freaking out as I stand firm. Get off my property is all I would respond with. After a few minutes, they realize they aren't going to get anywhere and just stagger away from the office door. I go back to my living room and I'm glued to the cameras. Immediately, I see one of them start going to the bathroom in my parking lot. I was already pretty upset, so I head right outside and quite loudly tell him twice, "Stop that, you animal! Now I'm absolutely calling the cops." They did ultimately head off my property and hang out on the curb of the highway out front, off my property. I called the cops regardless. What he was doing was not okay. While waiting for the cops to arrive and keeping an eye on these people, I see two other wedding guests return in a car and park in front of their room. This was the only nice, polite, and friendly couple in the group. I liked them and didn't lump them in with the rest. They obviously recognized the two idiots standing out at the curb, so they head over to talk to them, clearly to ask what was going on. They talked for a minute, and I laughed pretty hard when they both just started shaking their heads and walked away from the other two. A minivan then pulled up and picked up the two idiots and left. I called the cops back and said, "Don't bother coming, they're gone," and thought this time, okay, that's gotta be the end of it, right? Of course not. The next morning, the mother of the bride calls me and explains that the mother of the groom is in the drunk tank and was charged with a DUI. She was the van driver, and the crazy drunk idiot at my door that night was her boyfriend. They ask me what can be done to get into the mother of the groom's room so that they can get her purse and bring it to her at the police station. I say only the person whose name is on the registration card can access that room, and made an exception saying she can call me to ask me to go in the room and give her purse to a designated person. So all this happened, and we get her stuff out and give in to the mother of the bride. Everyone else eventually checked out, and I thought that was that. 2 weeks later, we get a call from the police. They advise us the drunk idiot boyfriend is being charged with assault for headbutting someone. Apparently, after picking him up from the curb, they went back to the wedding, proceeded to continue being drunk idiots, got kicked out, and returned to my motel. They got into an argument in the parking lot, and then he headbutted her. He's claiming he just lost his balance. It was not an assault, and they wanted to know if we might have camera footage. So my wife found the footage of him clearly doing the headbutting and handed it over to the cops with a big grin on her face. My wife, who's 37, had elective cosmetic surgery, and I, 42, am having a very negative reaction to the results. We've been together for over 15 years. A few months ago, she mentioned she was going to get it done. We discussed it, and I was extremely against it. I thought the whole thing was a waste of money, dangerous, and I find the aesthetic unappealing. I shared these feelings, and she told me that she was doing it anyway, found a doctor she liked, and arranged everything. A month or so ago, she told me she had scheduled the surgery and that she needed a ride there and back and would be laid up for a few days, and the recovery was something like 14 to 20 weeks. I again told her that it was a bad idea. She looked great. I find the results unattractive and that she should really think about what she's doing. She told me her mom would take her if I didn't. Fast forward 6 weeks. The results are what she expected and she's happy. The results are what I expected and I'm mortified. I feel she's ruined herself. I'm not overreacting. Her own family thinks the results are questionable. I have heard them, so this isn't just my opinion. I've always thought my wife was beautiful, and I've told her this since day one and have maintained this feeling for as long as we've been together. We haven't slept in the same bed due to her recovery since the surgery and won't for more than likely a while. I have a hard time looking at her, and I get a deep sense of loss and sadness, and the relationship is coming off the rails. Fighting, nasty comments, silent treatment, etc. My wife is mad at me for my reaction, saying that I'm being ridiculous and unsupportive, and I'm responding with, "I told you exactly how I would feel and you did it anyway. What did you expect?" She's blaming me for being angry and distant, but on the flip side, physical attraction is part of a relationship. And yeah, she's the same person, she just doesn't look like the same person. I told her how I felt and how I feel about it. She made the decision ignoring me. Am I the jerk? Edit. Since so many are asking what was done, it wasn't just one thing. It was a collection of procedures done at once, hence the long recovery time. Not the jerk. Part of being an adult in a relationship is understanding that you can't just run off and do anything you want without talking about it with your partner first. Everything you do affects them now. A relationship must have constant dialogue about things like this. I couldn't just go out and get a bunch of tattoos, get massive gains, and buy a bunch of stuff, totally change how I look, or so on, without talking about it with my wife. It affects her. I care about how she feels. It would need to be something really extreme for me to disregard that. You're angry because she didn't care how you felt. She's right, it is her choice. But do you really want to spend your life with someone who doesn't care how you feel? My Karen wife won't let me buy the coffee I want, even though I'm the only one who works. I've lately come to enjoy some nicer coffee than I usually drink. I brew it at home, so we're not talking daily $7 drinks or anything. Instead of getting a giant bulk bag of Kirkland coffee, I've come to enjoy a $12 bag from the grocery store. It lasts a bit over a week, maybe 2, instead of $15 for about 5 weeks. My wife doesn't work. I work from home. She also unfortunately isn't doing a lot around the house right now because of a medical condition. I've been picking up most of the slack while she sits around. This has been going on for 6 months for the household, years for the job. Yes, she has depression. Yes, she's getting treatment for it. I try my best to do what I can, but oftentimes I have to ask her multiple times to help with even simple tasks to share responsibility. We've had discussions on how I know she's working on the issue, but I can't do everything on my own. I make plenty to be able to have my coffee be a splurge. She'd previously commented on the cost, and I said, "It's well within the budget, and I like it. It's fine." Edit. I'd shown her the grocery budget, which is nearly always under budget every month for the past few years. I brought home another bag the other day, and she made another comment along the lines of, "You're spending way too much on this fancy coffee. You need to go back to the other stuff." Having had to make the grocery run again, after doing other household chores that morning, I snapped. The one with the job gets to make the grocery choices. Work again or contribute to the household, and you can have a say in what we buy. She called me a cold-hearted jerk and stormed out of the room. So, am I the jerk for my reaction to being called out on coffee buying? Everyone sucks here. For your part of it, it's only for saying the one with the job gets to make the grocery choices. In my opinion, that is cold-hearted. But if it really is the difference of $4.50 a week and that's within the budget, then she's being unreasonable. Not the jerk for buying the coffee you want, but a statement like that makes you sound like an obnoxious jerk. You get the jerk rating for that. If the situation were reversed, would you want your wife to be so dismissive of your concerns? You and your wife are life partners, for better or for worse, so what's yours is also hers and vice versa. Explain to her that you enjoy this coffee and it's under budget and continue to buy it if you want to, but don't act like some egotistical jerk. Everyone sucks here. As long as you're not about to lose the house or in financial troubles, she should not be dictating what you can and can't buy. It doesn't sound like this coffee is going to break the bank. She's a jerk for that. Maybe worth talking to her about why she has such anxiety about finances. It could come from her background or possibly from feeling guilty about not being able to work. On the other hand, you are absolutely the jerk for saying because you earn the money, you make all the financial decisions. You agreed to support her and she has valid reasons for not being able to work. If you don't like this situation, divorce her. But saying you get to make all the financial decisions because you're making the money is heading down the path of financially mistreating her. Comments like this are only going to make her more worried about your finances. You're the jerk. You sound like a monster, to be honest. Why do men still think it's our job to be your maids? Newsflash, it's not the 50s anymore. As a married couple, whatever money you earn is just as much hers as it is yours. When I was growing up, my dad tried the same crap, telling my mom that because he was the one working while she was watching TV all day, that he got to make the big financial decisions. Long story short, she decided to leave him and he's still paying her alimony to this day. Instead of retiring early like he planned to, he's still working at almost 70 years old and she gets to enjoy her life like she deserved to. That's what I call a win, and I hope your wife does the same thing to you for how horribly you're treating her. And they wonder why the marriage rates are declining so much. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for firing an employee returning from maternity leave? I really don't think I'm in the wrong here. I feel like the devil right now, so I'll accept whatever judgment you all have. I run a team of about 6 people. Our company offers a large amount of maternity leave, 10 months. One of my employees got pregnant recently. I'll call her Jess. Our team does project-based work, and in the period between her leaving for maternity leave, we finished up the project we were working on when she left and started working on a project without her. During this period, our team had to adapt to working without her expertise in certain matters. We adapted and eventually some of us developed the skills needed to do some of her workload. The situation we have now is me and 2 others split half the work that Jess used to do, and we have hired someone new to come into the team to handle the other part of Jess's workload and then some. This new employee came at significantly reduced cost as he was straight out of uni and we pay him a fraction of what Jess costs currently. Now Jess has come back to the team, but there's another issue. Our firm has informed us that for some stupid reason, we no longer have the budget for a 7-person team and we'll have to let someone go. The news came about when I submitted the paperwork for Jess's return. We are 5 months into a project that should take an estimated 10 months, and my decision came down to Jess and the man we hired to replace her. The reason we hired a replacement, which is not normally what we do, is because we anticipated that for this project, the workload would be far greater than our current capacity, which it is not. As you can tell by the title, I chose the replacement. I did so for the following reasons. Far cheaper, thus freeing up a lot more money than keeping Jess on. He was up to date on the project, and we would be able to move forward seamlessly, whereas with Jess, we would have to take time catching her up to speed on half the project. The clients already knew and liked working with him, whereas they didn't know Jess at all. She's been out of the field for a prolonged period, whilst he's been here for the past 9 months, so she may or may not find it hard to adapt back to work life, whilst with him it isn't a question. He performed his work better than she did hers and interacted better with the team. Obviously, the ideal situation which I wanted was to keep both and not put a new single mother with no other job lined up out in the cold, but I had to do right by the team and firm. I told her I'd write her a brilliant letter of recommendation and that in a few months she could try and apply for a job at our firm. Hopefully we'll have the budget, but she snapped at me and told me not to bother and called me a jerk and left. I know I sound cold and heartless, but I had to be fair to both employees, not just Jess, right? You're the jerk. Every single reason you mentioned was only true because she had been gone for maternity leave, which legally cannot be a reason to terminate someone. Yet it is the cause behind every reason you gave. Be prepared for a lawsuit. OP somehow firmly believes he's free and clear of all legal ramifications, and while I haven't seen what country they're in, I have a hard time believing after all his comments he can prove he fired her above board. ETA. Not to mention, he says more than once in the comments how no one was even remotely qualified to fill Jess's shoes and perform her role to the same extent she did. Heck, even in the original post, he says it took 3 people to take on her job. How can you justify firing her for anything but punishment for using a benefit her own company provided? Bonkers. I mean, his first attempt posting here said he basically fired his employee for being pregnant. If that's not admission of discrimination, I don't know what is. In the words of Andrew Garfield in The Social Network, you better lawyer up, jerk. You're the jerk. Jess, if you ever see this and the OP is deleted, I took screenshots. You're punishing her for having a baby and taking the maternity leave that your business offers? You knew she was coming back. Why didn't you hire a temp replacement until that time? You're not going to save money after she takes legal action for being fired because she's a mother. You're the jerk. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for firing them or not? Please let us know. If you knew she was returning, why hire a permanent replacement for her? I don't get that. Karen wife is jealous that I'm performing husband duties for my friend. I, 36 male, have a longtime friend, 34 female, who I live about 4 blocks from. We've always been very close. Her husband passed 3 years ago after a 9-month battle with brain cancer, during which she was his full-time caretaker. I was also very close with her husband, and since I lived close by, I would go over and help as much as I could, be it cooking, cleaning, taking the kids out to do things, yard work, and maintenance around the house, especially as he declined and required round-the-clock care. After he passed, I've continued to help my friend and her kids, and I spent a lot of time with her kids, who are now 11 and 9. Last year, I married my wife, who I started dating after my friend's husband had passed, so this isn't anything new. Since then, there have been consistent arguments about me performing husband duties for my friend. Some examples of the things she was upset about. My friend called because when she woke up, a pipe had burst in the ceiling and she couldn't find a plumber who would come out that day. I'm a contractor, so I was able to call a friend and he went over ASAP. And then I headed over and I helped her clean up the mess and helped with her talking to her insurance and hiring a remediation company. After that was done, I helped her demo and replace the drywall. Her car broke down, so I picked up her kids from school and went and played basketball with them while she got it to the shop and grabbed a rental. And then the boys wanted to have a pizza party, so we grabbed some pizzas and had dinner at the park. She was re-landscaping her backyard and putting in some raised planter beds, and I went over on my day off to help her. My wife is always welcome. She doesn't usually want to go, and instead she thinks that I should let her figure it out because she's a big girl and needs to stop acting like I'm her husband. She's even gone as far as suggesting that my friend wants to steal me away from my wife because she needs someone to take care of her. ETA. I met this friend and her husband in college while they were dating, and I was in a long-term relationship. I was a groomsman in their wedding, and I am the godfather of both their sons, and I was asked to be before both were born. No jerks here. I have a friend who does similar things for me since my husband passed, and I know that he's trying to look out for me because he was my husband's best friend. I really appreciate his help, but I would draw the line at inviting him to stay for pizza or hang out with my kids in case his wife, who's a really cool person, thought it was too much. If your wife is starting to feel uncomfortable, then you need to dial it back a bit. Save your help for the big things, like major do-it-yourself projects, and keep up with your friends socially by inviting her over to your house to hang out with you and your wife together. Info: are you helping out and spending time with your friend more than you have free time to relax with your wife? Have you ever canceled plans with your wife to help your friend? Have you tried to involve your wife in some of these activities, like the meal with the kids? Or do you keep it so your involvement with your friend and her kids is separate? Have you not considered that your wife probably expected your assistance and involvement in your friend's life to reduce, if not stop completely after you were married? I would be asking if they're still spending special time together, going on dates, giving time for them as a couple. When these aren't in play, a person starts to wonder. Exactly. If OP skipping off to have his cup filled by friends and the kids, and his wife is a second thought, there's a problem. 100% wife said, "I'm feeling things," and OP went full defensive protector mode over his second family and not his wife. OP, you're the jerk. You're the jerk. I say that because there have been many reasonable comments posted here, and I haven't seen a single one that asked you to go no contact with the boys or your friends. But you've shown no acceptance of any type of compromise or any validation whatsoever of your wife's feelings. You simply came here for validation that you're right and she's wrong. That says to me that you value your second family over her. I'm expecting to be downvoted, but honestly, divorce your wife. She's not your priority. You already have a family. Hope you and your late bestie's wife are happy together, and I hope your wife finds a husband who puts her first. You're the jerk. You're the jerk. It's one thing to help a friend when needed, but you seem to have a second family with this woman and her kids. The fact that your wife is invited to see the four of you being a family and she's the outsider doesn't make it any better. An emergency is one thing. Helping out with the gardening is a horse of a different color. You're the jerk. When my husband and I got married, we vowed to protect each other's heart. We vowed to prioritize each other, thus our marriage and family above all things. Whenever a situation arises, it always boils down to how it will affect us in our marriage. Communicate, compromise, and set healthy boundaries. I'm not implying for you to totally cut them out of your life, but set some boundaries that are acceptable to your wife. Please don't make her feel like the third wheel in her own marriage. Watching on the sideline as her husband plays family in front of her. Reassure her that she and your family will always be your priority as it should be. You married her. You made your vow to her. She's your wife and partner, and will be the mother to your future kids. Be the godfather to those kids, but please don't burn your family to keep your friend's family warm. It's you're the jerk. Priorities and boundaries should have been established from the start. A new manager was older than me, so they knew the best way to run an event. I used to work part-time for my university running student events. Experience is the best teacher. I had participated in these events as a student, assisted in these events under someone else as part of my scholarship, and as a staff member, ran the events myself. We had a new college head who was much older, approximately 50 to 60, while everyone else was in their early 20s. This woman was the most pig-headed, arrogant fool you can imagine, and despite being new, she wouldn't sit back and observe how things worked or listen to those of us on our team who had been there for years. No matter what you told her, when she announced something that wouldn't work or would cause problems, the answer was always the same. I'm older, so I know best. Didn't matter if it would take you longer to do it her way, or in one case it was technically illegal. Of course, mistakes that we had warned her would happen were always someone else's fault or swept under the rug. During event planning, one look at the schedule told me she hadn't allocated the team properly. Email exchange. Me. Probably not a good idea to have the whole team in an hour before the event, most of them standing around doing nothing. Best to get 5 or so people in for setup, most of the team in for running event, and hold back another 3 to 4 for cleanup. College head. No, I want everyone in, helping out equally an hour before the event. Me. They're only meant to do 2 hours of work per event. If you have them an hour early for a 2 event, that's 3 hours. They'll all leave before cleanup. The slackers will slack off, and the proactives will end up doing everything. Her. I'm older than you. I know best. Just do as you're told. Cue malicious compliance. Me. Fine, but I've got some personal business to go directly after the event. I'll handle procurement and setup, but we'll need to leave right after the event is over. Her, that's fine. On to other business. Day of the event, the whole team showed up an hour before the setup. As expected, 5 or so did all the setup work while most of the team just stood around on their phones. Some even got bored and wandered off. It was not the team members' fault for standing around. Only so many people can do meal prep and set up tables without getting in each other's way. 10 minutes before the event, college head shows up and everything's running smoothly. Event was a lot of fun. Some of the team continued to wander off. Some ran the events, some participated. I was running around as a gopher, letting the college head take credit for the event in front of everyone. Not doing any work, mind you, but taking credit for it. I made sure to remind her I had to leave right at the end of the event for personal business in front of the other college heads several times. To be extra spiteful, I neglected to stop several team members from wandering off who had done no work other than stand around talking and eating, and encouraged several people who had definitely done 2 hours of work to call it a night and thank them for their help. Forgetful me, I also didn't tell team members standing around during events to start cleaning up as things were finishing. All the free food was gone, all the games were over. Both students and team members were wandering off into the night, and all of a sudden, college head, "Wait, where are you going? There's so much mess, and we've got to put away all of the tables and tidy up the different games, but everyone has left." Me, yes, we probably should have saved up a few team members to do cleanup, but they've all already done their 2 hours. Anyway, like I told you earlier, I've got some personal business to attend directly after the event, so I'll see you tomorrow. Her, what personal business is it? This will take over an hour to do all on my own. Me, I'm sorry, but I said personal business because I wasn't comfortable discussing it with you or the team about what it actually was, but it is quite personal and I'm gonna be late. I wandered off home for my personal business of closing all of my curtains and playing Xbox, chuckling at the thought of that arrogant woman having to do all of that work by herself. The formal complaint she put in for me leaving didn't really go anywhere, as I just forwarded the email exchange to management. Sadly, pig-headed people are pig-headed, because they don't learn no matter what. I eventually quit, and a few months later was introduced to my replacement's replacement, who was also ready to quit. Am I the jerk for cutting back on work to prove a point to my wife? My wife is usually an angel, but has recently gotten into a friendship with a woman who I personally believe is a bad influence on her. Not in a patronizing way, more of a lay down with dogs, get up with fleas types of situation. I never said anything about her because frankly it doesn't affect me. Until it did. A few months ago, my wife began pressuring me to do more around the house. Before I get an instant "you're the jerk," we already split chores and childcare. Admittedly, she had a bigger cut than I because she's a stay-at-home mom, but I do most of the cooking, breakfasts and dinners. Lunch is her responsibility for her and the boys. I take out the garbage and I do laundry, and I deep clean the bathrooms once a week. I do also help with our boys' homework and such. She insists that I'm not doing enough and that I should be doing more around the house. I tried having discussions with her, asking what she expected from me. Namely, all chores and child rearing should be my duty, it seems. And for months, it seemed to be going nowhere. She used words when she was speaking to me, which made it feel manipulative. It boiled over when we were out with friends one night, and she began talking about how I never helped out and how I use her as a house slave, her words. I will admit, I saw red. This next part is where I may be the jerk. I didn't say anything that night, but the next day, I asked my boss to be given reduced hours for the next little bit due to stress, and I took over everything in the house. I cooked breakfast and made lunch for the boys before I drove them to school. I cleaned the house top to bottom. I did every dish we had twice and so on. My wife was blindingly happy and bragged to her friend that she finally had worn me in. She didn't lift a finger for around a month. Then she began asking why we never went on dates anymore and complaining that she wanted to get her nails done as they were growing in. I explained that I had to take that out of our budget so we could continue to afford everything else, but we could absolutely have a movie night in and I could paint her nails for her. She was unhappy with that solution, so I asked her if she would want to get a part-time job to pay for either luxuries. You would have thought I had asked her if she wanted to join a cult. She then asked if I could just pick up more shifts at work to cover her other expenses and used the phrase, "be a man," which I found more than a little insulting. I then asked her if she would be willing to go back to splitting the chores and such, which is when she began to catch on that the two were related. She yelled at me that I was being a manipulative jerk for doing this and even claimed it was financial mistreatment. I stood strong for a while, but now I'm questioning my methods because even I feel what I did was a bit underhanded. So, am I the jerk? You're the jerk for so many reasons. First off, you have no right to decide who your wife gets to be friends with, and you also sound extremely judgmental by the way you talk about her friend. If her friend is helping her gain new insights and perspectives on life that you don't agree with, that sounds like a you problem. Secondly, it's obvious your wife was feeling unappreciated. She's probably so used to the workload that you dump on her that she didn't realize it before. But now that she's gained the courage to discuss her feelings with you, you decide that you're going to stop working your normal hours in order to get back at her? Thirdly, if you actually tell her that she can't get her nails done because you had to remove it from your budget, then I'm sorry, but you seriously need to find a better paying job. Why did you even start a family if you can't afford to take care of them? I'm proud of the friend for waking your wife up to the value that she brings to this relationship, and I hope that she leaves you and finds a man who will treat her like the queen that she is. I also hope she takes you to the cleaners in court so that you will have to go back to working your big boy hours at your joke of a job. Am I the jerk for moving out after my parents told me to pay rent? This story happened almost a year back, and when I told my friends about it, they said I should post it here because they were split 50-50. So I, 19, male, moved out of my parents' house about a year ago. There was nothing wrong in my life. I had a good upbringing. I loved being home. I had a lot of friends, and my parents were loving. Or so I thought. Anyways, I was going to have a big 18th birthday, as it's the legal age where I stay, in Australia, and means you go from a boy to a man, kid to adult. I had a venue rented out, and I had family and friends coming from all over to celebrate with me. We had a blast that night. I had my first drink and almost made it my last. I don't remember anything from that night, but from the photos that I've seen, it looked like I had a good night, so I was happy. A few days after that night, my parents sat me down to have a talk. They told me that I'm a man now, and that I've been working a lot of hours, and yet they haven't received anything. They told me that as soon as I started working, they expected me to help pay rent. Obviously, I didn't know any of that because I didn't get told that. They told me that I should have known better, but now that I'm 18, they expect me to help with the rent. Honestly, I didn't mind helping them if they asked. I was 16 when I got my first job at McDonald's, and I'm now working in construction. But they made it seem like I was in the wrong for not giving them money. And I get where they're coming from, but from my perspective, all I had seen was green. All I saw was a triple-digit paycheck that I wanted to spend straight away. Anyways, I told them I'd start helping them from now on, but it wasn't good enough for them. They told me that I had to pay them back all of the money that I should have given them when I first started working, which was almost $10,000. I said no flat out, and they got mad. They told me that either I pay rent and pay them back what I owed, or I move out and find my own place. So that's what I did. I moved out a few days after to my friend's house for a bit until I found my own apartment and have been living here for about 8 to 10 months. As soon as I moved out, I got bombarded with calls and texts saying that I disrespected them by not paying them what I owed and by making it harder for them to live now that they don't have someone washing or doing their laundry, taking out their rubbish, and all the other little stuff. They're both in their early 40s and are more than capable of doing it. My friends asked me why I never introduced them to my parents and told them what I've told you. Some of them already hated my parents, and some of them said it was my duty as their son. I honestly didn't know I had to give them my money or help out. I would have if they would have asked, but I feel like they just disrespected and tried to gaslight me into giving them money. I just need to know if I'm the jerk or not. Edit. A lot of people have asked me what my cultural background is, as if it has something to do with my situation. My mother's from Chile and my dad is Samoan. As I know of, both cultures do expect help, but mostly in the form of chores and keeping the house clean. It isn't until you're 18 and still living there that you're expected to pay rent. I do have siblings, and they had jobs before they were 18 too. They were never made to pay rent before they were 18, nor did my parents ask for backdated rent. Just wanted to clear up the air with some frequently asked questions. Edit 2. As some of you have pointed out, it is too my better judgment that I should have helped out without having to be told. I will take that as a fault of mine. But what I won't accept and can now clearly see that backdating rent to a minor, which is already bad in itself, will never be acceptable, and I stand firm on my decision of not paying and moving out. I do, however, have a family dinner in a few days with my parents and siblings, so if you want an update after that, I'll be happy to make one. Thanks for all the help and support. It makes me happy knowing that I made the right choice and to have unbiased opinions on the matter. Not the jerk. I was going to say no jerks here until they told you that you owed them $10,000 for backdated rent payments. You mentioned this, and it's absolutely insane, especially since they only told you about helping with rent after you turned 18. They shouldn't start charging you as soon as you get a job at 16. It's typical to ask for help with rent after your kid turns 18. It isn't typical to start charging your kid for rent at the age of 16 the moment they get a job and say nothing for 2 years. You owe your parents nothing, OP. So they expected backdated rent from when you were 16 to 18? Not the jerk. They're responsible for paying for your living costs as a minor. My parents are demanding I raise their grandchild. So I, 27 female, was estranged from my deceased sister for 5 years after she had an affair with my fiance that not only I found out about, but resulted in a pregnancy. I cut the two of them out of my life and declared that they were done to me. They had a kid who is now 4, but maybe close to 5 now. I'm not sure. I've never met their kid. I never wanted to meet the kid or be in their life. My parents knew their grandchild and supported the child while my sister and ex were alive. They were on and off after I left him. I heard from friends that their breakups were quite explosive. When they both recently passed in an accident, people were shocked, but also kind of not, because a lot of people assumed they were arguing and not focusing on the road. Their kid went into foster care. My parents tried to take their kid in, but were denied on the grounds of health and mobility. The kid's paternal relatives did not want to take them in. No surprises there though, and so my parents turned to me. I'm now engaged again to Luke, and we bought our forever home last year. We're stable and happy, and my parents believe we should take in their grandchild. I told them I would not be a good fit to raise the kid, and I was sorry, but that was the end of the discussion as far as I'm concerned. Luke told them that he was with me on that. My parents went behind my back to try and talk him into it, but he told me, and I told them to stop. They begged me again to reconsider and said, imagine how nice it would be to know my nibbling to get to be there. To have a kid who is part of our family, kept in our family, and raised lovingly around people who want the best for them. I told them that that's not a job for me and to let it go. A few days went by, and I thought maybe they'd drop it. Then they called and told me that they think about how good it will look for me, the betrayed sister and ex-fiancé, to have enough love and compassion to raise the kid that was conceived out of said betrayal and love them and be the best mom to that kid who could exist. They said people would think I'm a saint and would always think of me as an incredible person. I told them I am no saint. I do not want to be a saint. I don't need to be seen as some incredible, amazing person, and I'm not going to raise their grandkid just to look good to other people, and they need to stop asking me to. They told me I was heartless and asked how I could not care at all about a kid who is my own flesh and blood and who's been tossed around the system in just a few weeks, because according to them, the kid has been in 4 homes already. They said I should not be able to turn my back on family like this and I should have more compassion for them, who were told by the authorities that they will not be allowed to raise their grandkid. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. As sad as it is, having the kid at home will remind you of your ex and sister's betrayal, plus their passing. I would be insulted by the fact that they think you should do it to look good. Not the jerk. This kid is not your flesh and blood. The kid is theirs. I'm sorry for the grief they're putting you through. Not the jerk. I can't imagine a betrayed ex to be a good stepmother for an orphaned kid, least when the person went no contact with family of that betrayal. Sounds more like the ideal setup for an evil stepmother. Am I the jerk for assuming my friend was keeping her partner away because I didn't like him when actually he didn't like me? I, 38 female, have known Allie, 40 female, for 15 years. We first met at work when we were single and the youngest people there. We became good friends and socialized together and still do. Allie then met her partner, Matt, who she is still with years later. He does not share her interests. He's an avid football supporter, UK, and very anti the rival football team. Even when he doesn't go to watch matches live, he watches at the pub with male friends. He plays sports with his friends. She's a football widow. She likes going to the theater and to dinner. He'll go to dinner with her, but doesn't much enjoy the theater unless it's a serious play. She likes musicals, and she ends up going with female friends. She says she doesn't mind. They aren't joined at the hip, and she has plenty of friends and relatives who enjoy going to the theater with her, and that she doesn't want to go to football. I wonder. I'm known for being brutally honest. When she introduced me to Matt, she asked my opinion, and I gave it. I didn't really see them together. I didn't really like that he drinks and swears. He has a professional job, but isn't very refined, unlike her, and I found him a bit difficult to connect to. At the time, she was hurt but got over it and generally just engineered it, so I never really saw him. He was always busy when I organized a party, etc. They now have 2 sons, and he looks after them when she comes out with her friends. To be honest, more recently, my opinion of him has improved. He seems to be a really good dad to the kids, and they clearly adore him. They are also football mad. It took me longer to meet my significant other, Edward, but I now have, and we just got engaged. Allie and Matt both attended our engagement party. Edward actually likes football and ended up getting on really well with Matt. Later, I asked Allie if she'd be up for doing something as couples, as Edward and Matt got on so well. She was non-committal. A few weeks later, I tried to arrange something, and she accepted for herself, but Matt was busy. I explained I wanted to do something with the 4 of us when he was free, but she kept stalling. I pushed it, maybe I shouldn't have, and she said it wasn't a good idea because he and I didn't really get along. I said it was okay. I changed my opinion more recently, and Edward likes him. She looked surprised and then awkwardly let me know it was because he didn't really like me. She thought I knew. I didn't, and I was upset. This was news to me. I asked her why. She was embarrassed, but said he found me judgmental and too much. I don't even know what that means. A few other examples as well. I was hurt, and I told her I had assumed she kept us apart because I didn't like him, not the reverse. She said that we didn't get on, so what difference did it make? I'm beyond hurt and did react badly, and I told her some honest truths about him. I regret this now, and I tried to apologize, but she won't return my calls. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Brutally honest is always code for excuse to be a jerk. And now you're upset that your very own behavior got flipped on you? And you doubled down when told so? Maybe this is the time for some honest self-reflection. Let me get this straight. You said a bunch of incredibly rude things to someone's new partner, then one day decided you like them actually, and didn't realize that everything you've ever done to them caused them to form an opinion of you. My girl, every person who is not you in the world has a mind of their own and exists in the world outside of how they relate to your life. They all have deep inner worlds just as complex as your own. Not everything is about you. Oh, and you're the jerk. You're the jerk. You can be honest with friends, tactfully, not brutally. You can date a person and keep your own separate interests, but still find that person interesting. How can you be surprised that someone you didn't like for years is returning your vibe? Am I the jerk for laughing at my girlfriend when she suggested I should offer to pay the bill for her family? I'm 23, male. My girlfriend, who's 21, and I have been together for a year and a half. Her family is super sweet, and I get along great with them. Now, my girlfriend's dad is pretty well off. Every time I've gone out to dinner with her family, he always foots the bill. Her family has been great to me. They always welcome me into their home. I went on a vacation with them back in winter. Her parents paid for our hotel for the entire week. Her dad gave her money for food. Granted, it was for her, her brother, and myself. I also only paid half of the flight because my girlfriend offered to pay for the other half. The only thing I really had to pay for is food a couple of days out of the trip, which my girlfriend pitched in and helped me with too. This past weekend, my girlfriend, myself, her younger brother, and her dad went out for brunch. I was spending the weekend with her anyway, so she invited me to join them. Before we left, her and I were talking, and she mentioned how maybe I should offer to pay for brunch, as in all 4 of us. She assured me that her dad would 1000% refuse to let me pay, but he would probably really appreciate and respect me for offering. Now, here's where I may sound like the jerk, but I honestly laughed at her suggesting this. I told her I would offer to cover her and my portion of the bill, but to expect me to offer to cover the entire bill is obscured. Sure, I work a full-time job and all of that, but I have my own bills and stuff to worry about too, and she wants me to offer to pay a $150 brunch? She told me that if her dad accepted, which she 100% guaranteed that he wouldn't, that she would send me half for the bill. I continued to laugh and told her I'm not doing that. I'll offer to pay for our half and that's it. I asked her if the roles were reversed, if she would offer to pay the bill for my family. 8 of us in total, including my girlfriend. She said that's completely different. That's 8 people, not 4. We both have very different upbringings. In terms of the situation I mentioned about paying the bill, she grew up with a decently well-off family where they would constantly argue on who would pay the bill because everyone in her family would always offer out of courtesy. I grew up very differently, as I come from a family that was not financially well off. If someone offered to pay the bill, you just sit back and let them do it. When we went to brunch, I offered to cover both her and my portion of the bill. Her dad immediately refused and covered the whole bill. She gave me a "I told you so" look. She thinks I was a jerk for how I reacted to the situation and says I should have trusted her. She told me she needs some space because my reaction to the whole situation is kind of a turnoff to her and she needs to think about things. Am I the jerk? You weren't obligated to offer, but yeah, you're the jerk for not having any modicum of courtesy, given how much her father has treated you. Do you have no shame or self-respect? And your girlfriend was right that he wouldn't let you pay. There's no risk to your finances since she offered to pay half if she was wrong. You sound like a leech, a selfish one too. Don't be surprised if your girlfriend's attitude towards you is seriously damaged by this. Yeah, OP shouldn't accept stuff if he isn't planning to reciprocate. That's not something differentiating between being brought up poor or rich. It's called human decency. You're the jerk. Your girlfriend wants you to show her dad you're not a freeloading mooch. You apparently think that doing so is laughably ridiculous. Sounds like the two of you come from wildly different cultures, but open mockery followed by refusing to understand where she, and by extension her family, are coming from is not a good sign. You're the jerk. It's common courtesy to pay back the favor of at least offering to pay the bill once in a while, since you can afford to. Your girlfriend's parents seem like generous and overall great people. You'd be doing yourself a disservice by not nurturing that relationship. The fact that they are well off doesn't mean that their generosity should be taken for granted, and it seems you're doing just that. Am I the jerk for wanting more to be done about my brother stealing $400 from me? My brother just stole $400 from me and basically nothing's being done about it. I work as a server, so I bring home cash from tips. One of my classes went on a trip that cost $900, so I stopped going to the bank while I paid for the trip, and it just became a habit, so most of my money has been just sitting in my room on my desk. Friday afternoon, I went to grab some money to repay one of my brothers for something he bought. There was only around $150 left. I know for a fact that after the trip, I had about $600 to $700. I counted it before and after I left. Someone obviously stole the money. I started searching around my room to see if anything else had been taken. Nothing. It was just the money. The money was basically in plain sight, which wasn't the smartest idea, but I never thought my siblings would steal it, so it wasn't a problem. I asked family if they knew anything about it. They didn't. A few hours later, two of them tell me they think it was the youngest. I'll call him Caleb. Caleb is 14. He obviously doesn't have a job right now. He worked at a haunted house for about a month and a half for $10 a day, and he only worked 3 to 4 days a week. It wasn't that much in total. When he finally got paid, he spent all of the money within a week or two. Yesterday, after talking to my other brothers, we decided to do something about our suspicions and search his room. We found $217 in Caleb's jacket pocket. The money was obviously mine, because there's no way he would have gotten that much cash. We waited for our dad to get home to talk to him about it. My dad instantly confronted him about it, and Caleb obviously tried denying it at first, saying that he just found it. My dad mentioned we found $217. He broke, admitted to stealing it from me. He can't pay me back for what he's already spent, so my dad thinks that he should just pay me back with chores. I'm kind of mad that not much is being done about this other than him getting a few extra chores. My parents just don't seem to care. That money was my college money, and I really need it since I leave for college in a few months. My friends are saying go to the police about it. My coworkers are saying that chores aren't enough to pay me back or learn the lesson that stealing isn't okay. He's stolen from people before, but he never learns from it. I think more should be done about this, but my parents think I'm going overboard and that just doing my chores is enough. They're acting like I'm crazy for wanting my brother to actually get in trouble for this, but maybe I'm just overly mad because it was my money. Not the jerk. Your parents need to immediately pay you back with actual cash money. He can then pay them back with chores if that's what they think is appropriate. Not the jerk. He should get a job and hand you every paycheck until you're fully paid back. He can go cut lawns or something. Not the jerk. Your parents should replace it. While you could go to the cops, it isn't going to help. Fact of the matter is, they're not going to be able to do anything short of charging him, which doesn't replace the money. Bottom line, demand your parents replace the money. Their kid, their problem. Karen demands the government provide for her family. I'm female 27, and my friend, who's also female 27, we'll call her Sarah. and her husband decided to have a baby in 2020. They were both unemployed at the time because of lockdown. Ever since the baby arrived, when the friendship groups get together, all Sarah does is dominate the conversation about her money woes. She is now a stay-at-home mom, and her husband's small business collapsed during lockdown, and he's never worked since as he can't find a job in his niche field. The friend group has always been supportive of her and suggested extra government support she can apply for, and have also suggested her husband look for work outside of his field for the time being, but she never seems to listen and only wants to vent. Yesterday, she told the friend group that she and her husband had been secretly trying for another baby, and she was now pregnant. Shortly after the news, Sarah once again started to complain about money. She was talking about how her kid is sleeping on a mattress on the floor because she outgrew her crib, but they can't afford to buy another bed for her right now. She was ranting that the government should give more financial support to unemployed parents. Sarah then pointed out that I was being quiet, and I told her that if I was being honest, she put herself in a worse financial position by planning another baby, and it's not the government's responsibility to provide for her family, especially considering her husband has been unemployed for more than 2 years now. She cried, left, and now my friends are all saying I should apologize. You're the jerk. You have absolutely no right to decide who should and who shouldn't be having kids. I hope her and the whole friend group ghost your judgmental self, because I know I would. Her and her husband are the only ones who get to decide if they want to have more kids or not, and she's right about the government stepping in and doing what it's there to do. It's there to serve the people, especially those who need help. Why is it that the people like yourself who are so high and mighty and don't even need financial help at all are the quickest to judge those who do? You're what's wrong with this country, and I'm so glad we have someone in office who disagrees with your outdated ways of thinking. I also hope that you are in the exact same position she is one day and that you can't get the help that you need. You're the jerk. I'm getting major conservative vibes from you. If you come to Reddit and expect us to support your insulting of those who are battling socioeconomic struggles, you're in the wrong place. If it were up to me, there would be a hard limit on how much money anyone can legally make. Then the excess would be used for people like your friend who need it. Why are some people making $100 million a year while others can't afford to feed their kids? Because we have a broken system that doesn't work. Yes, you're a major jerk, and your friend did not at all deserve your mistreatment. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her friend? Please let us know. I think you're the jerk, Reddit boy, for reading these stories and comments that just make my blood boil. But they're very entertaining though, that's for sure. Am I the jerk for telling my sister she was never a scapegoat? I, 20 female, have an older sister, Jen, who's 28, and a younger sister, Chloe, who's 17. Jen made our lives horrible growing up. She was rude, reckless, a liar, a thief, everything. She refused to go to therapy and fought our mom every step of the way. None of us could have nice things because Jen would ruin them. She got into a screaming match with Chloe when she was 11 and Jen was 22. There's so much more she's done, but it's very personal. She was a bad person, full stop. When she was 24, she met her current boyfriend, who's a literal godsend. Jen finally went to therapy, got a degree, and has a job. She's not perfect, but I can acknowledge the effort as much as I dislike her. Over the past few months, she's been making an effort to reconnect with the family. Chloe is full no contact, but me and Mom have been seeing her. I feel like she's been lying to her therapist because she's been told that she was the scapegoat, I was the invisible kid, and Chloe was the golden child. This couldn't be any further from the truth. I will admit, at the height of Jen's spiral, Mom did assume everything bad was caused by Jen, but that was because it had been years of the same destructive pattern of behavior. Like, yes, Jen, you're an alcoholic. Of course she's going to assume it was you who stole her booze. Or assuming she got fired from her job due to her attitude, which is why she got fired from every job beforehand. Or assuming she was being brought home by the police because she regularly breaks the law. This was never Mom being malicious, but when that's what you've come to expect over nearly 10 years, you're going to make a snap judgment. Jen and her fiance, Luke, met with me to have coffee, and she brought this up, and I'll admit, I laughed in her face. She asked what was wrong, and I said, scapegoat? Seriously? Jen, I'm glad you're getting better, but you were a jerk growing up. She got really upset and said she was trying to reach out. I said I appreciated it, but she has to acknowledge how much hurt she caused everyone. She ended up storming out and sent me a text saying she's not going to be disrespected like that and that it took years for her to realize the family's dynamic. Am I the jerk here? Edit. Some people have asked me how I know Jen is lying and why I was so dismissive of her. Here's why. Her assessment of her siblings' dynamic, Golden, Invisible, and Scapegoat, do not line up at all. I'm apparently the invisible kid, which could not be further from the truth. The same goes with Chloe, who Jen labeled the golden child. I'm looking at examples and traits of all three syndromes, and none of them line up. I also want to make it clear that Jen assigned these labels to us, not her therapist. I've learned that responsible therapists don't use terms like these, so my best guess is that Jen came up with all of this herself whilst we were meeting, or her therapist reinforced it. Either way, Jen came up with this alignment, which makes me skeptical of her. Not the jerk, but it sounds like you could also benefit from therapy. You don't want to hold on to all of this anger for your sister forever, especially if she's trying to better herself. You'll just come off bitter. Maybe keep contact to a minimum for now too. Is she getting better though? It seems that the sister is delusional. Instead of taking accountability for what she did, she came up with an alternative reality of what really happened. It's easy to get better when your excuse is that you were mistreated and not that you were just a bad person. Not the jerk. Your words were harsh, but they sound like they're spot on. And, wording aside, your point was to acknowledge her growth, but also point out that it's not okay to claim victimhood after the fact if it keeps you from actually taking responsibility for your actions. It sounds like she's made some strides, but if this turns into, I was actually the victim, then her progress in therapy have gone sideways and it'll become toxic again. You were right to point that out and make sure she knows you have your own memory of how this went down. It's complex because she may legitimately have gotten the short end of the stick at times, like assumptions she had done something bad when she hadn't due to the track record of bad things she had done. She'd be best served to let it all go rather than trying to untangle the web of when she was wronged. I hope she gets over it and continues her growth, but I don't think you were the jerk for what you said. Oh, I can't read? Bet. Many moons ago, I worked contract for a medical placement company in the employee health department of a rack and pinion steering plant. The plant was scheduled to close, but they were still hiring. It was a head scratcher for us too, and extra help was needed for drug screens on the new hires. The other duties were seeing to injuries as they occurred, setting up appointments with Doc on days he would come, flu shots, and then there was the project. Here's where the story begins. The project was a collection of every medical piece of paper in the plant, all of them, scattered in boxes stacked to the ceiling. No sense of order at all. Two of the veteran nurses would periodically adjourn down to the war room, as it was dubbed, to do whatever they did with the mess. I was enlisted to help one day and succeeded in only managing to mess up the Excel spreadsheet, named Apricot for reasons I've yet to understand, that they were using to attempt to collate this mess. On days when we were slow, if we had no patience, I'd stay at my post and read. And one of those days, the boss lady came by and decided to take umbrage at that hobby. I should add that if I was reading, everything was stocked. All other projects were done, and I'd already been yelled at for sweeping up after myself. I'd really rather you not do that. I need you doing work. It looks bad. Okay, what else needs to be done? After she looks around at all I've done, nothing. You're done. Just don't read. So I said, I'm not a good sitter. Fast forward, she gets sick and a temporary boss comes in. I get assigned the project. It takes a minute, but I get it whipped into shape. First, I sorted papers into folders by name. Then I organized by dates on papers, past to recent in each file. Then I alphabetized the folders and put them in boxes. What had taken the other two nurses months on end took me a few weeks. After that, I started a new Excel spreadsheet. Data entry is one of my favorite things, and I'm fast. Name, date of birth, first date listed, last date listed, easy peasy. I was blowing through 20 to 30 boxes a day. I only took lunch and bathroom breaks. The boss comes back from sick leave, walks in and goes pale. What happened? Nothing. I've been working super hard. Is it not done right? It's great, but it's gone. Yes, ma'am. I've made decent progress. She hem-hawed around and finally muttered, I need you to slow down. Sorry? I need you to slow down. We told them we needed at least this amount of time to complete that project, and as fast as you've gone, there won't be any work left to do. So what else can I do? Do a box, read a book, do a box, take a nap. Just slow down. Bring your books or several books. Just slow down. And that's how I got permission to read in my own downtime at work. Might not be the best malicious compliance story, but after 15 years, it still makes me laugh. Hibachi fun. This happened just yesterday afternoon. My wife convinced me to go to a tulip farm, spent the time picking up tulips, paying for them, and having to stand and walk around for 3 hours for Instagram pictures is not fun. By the end of that event, we were tired and hungry. I wanted to eat somewhere fun and found a hibachi place. My kids were excited and my wife was happy with her haul. We ended up arriving at the hibachi place and led to our seats. Great service by the staff. More on that later. I forgot to mention that I had a toddler and wanted a high seat for my daughter so she can see the griddle. The staff pointed to one of the waitstaff and indicated I needed a high chair. I was 10 feet from the chair and the waitress was further away. I waved her off and grabbed the chair myself. As I returned to the table, another couple was being led to the other side of our table. Each hibachi setup set 9 to 10 people, so I stopped to let them pass. After passing, a woman turned around and said something to me, but it was noisy and I was concentrated on getting my daughter seated. As I struggled with the seatbelt, I felt a tap on my shoulder, but I sat my daughter first. After seating my daughter, I turned around and the same lady was literally inches from my face telling me a bunch of things. I giggled and told her, "Sorry, I don't work here." Now, I don't know why she thought I did at all. Everyone who worked there was dressed in black and white. I was wearing a t-shirt, had mud on my shoes, and my hair was tossed around like I hadn't slept in days. However, she insisted and kept raising her voice at me. Granted, it was noisy. I repeated that, "I don't work here." She then got heated, yelling and getting angry, saying it was about her food allergies, and if she got sick, she would sue me. At this point, I was tired and told her, "I don't care about your allergies because I don't work here." She put her finger in my face, and my wife notices, gets up, swats her hand away, and stood between this lady and I. My wife clarifies that I don't work there, turns around and sits me down, and this lady keeps raising her voice that I was rude to her. At this point, her husband was red and grabbed to sit her down. This interaction lasted for less than a minute. The staff came by and calmed everyone down and made sure everyone was seated. They asked if I wanted to be moved, but I said no. I was fine where I was, then asked the lady if she wanted to be moved, and she said no, but seemed pretty upset. The hibachi chef had noticed all of this as he rolled his cart in. He started his routine, and my wife and kids loved it. I just sat there, happy as a clam that everyone was having a great time while I would get to eat. At this point of the dinner, the hibachi chef started spraying my kids with water, which they loved, and for the adults, he would spray them with white wine from a bottle to loosen them up. When he gets to me, he gives me a really long dose and says, "You need a double. You work overtime today." I thought this was hilarious. As he went around giving all the adults a spray of wine, he gets to the lady and gives her the tiniest spray and says, "Maybe not too much for you." She giggles, but was obviously not entertained. As he does his routine, we had a good time and ate good food. My kids loved it, and to me, that was the important part. Now, after the routine, the chef started cleaning up. He tosses a clean rag and scraper near me, and without missing a beat, I yelled, "Yes, boss!" got up and started scraping off the grill. The chef started barking at me even more. I moved faster and more frantically. Then a waitstaff brings a mop and bucket, and I started mopping. Everyone was laughing. My kids were going crazy. It was hilarious to me, at the least. So to add to it, I spontaneously asked everyone to give a generous tip for the show, even though it wasn't necessary, and they did. Except for you-know-who. I was finally urged back to my chair with clapping from my family. Chef gave a handshake for being a good sport and went on his way. We finished eating and getting served dessert. We then hear talking from the corner where the couple is now arguing because she was mad at me and her husband allowed it all to happen. I really felt bad at that point and just wanted everyone to leave on a good note. I apologized about the interaction earlier because it was easy for me. I had no stake in their argument and it did seem to help. We finished eating and packed up our stuff to leave. As we were leaving, this lady was at the lobby complaining to the manager about everything. My wife stopped and chimed in. Apparently, the manager already knew, made it clear to the lady to calm down, and in an Asian accent said, "Oh, so sorry, no refund. Now you go home." The lady was getting pulled by her husband to the parking lot at that point. "Sorry, dude." Then that manager turns to us in the most New Jersey accent. "I can't believe that accent worked. I hope you guys had a great time." He proceeded to talk to my wife and kids while his staff helped me get our stuff into the car. He walked us out and gave my kids some takeaway snacks. Loved it. Overall, it was a fun day. Am I the jerk for saying that my sister made her own bed when she named her daughter like this? My sister, after years of trying to have kids, got pregnant to have my niece. When she told us the name, I explained in the best way that the name she chose was very common for an animal. An example with an American name. She wanted to call her daughter Bella, just Bella. And in my country, Bella would be extremely common for a pet. She said I was anticipating the worst and wouldn't change my mind. I gave up, but she was warned. She said I was anticipating the worst and I should change my mind. I gave up, but she was warned. Recently, my fiance was asking for a dog and I decided to adopt one. My fiance always wanted to have a dog named Bella, tribute to her childhood dog, and I even commented about it being the same name as my niece, who's 2 now. But she said that she always wanted to name one of her pets even before my sister got pregnant. Since she owns it, I didn't want to contest. We currently don't live together, but we constantly stay at each other's houses and Bella comes with her all the time. This weekend was my son's birthday and there was a party at the house, so all my siblings, parents, in-laws, and my fiance came over, including Bella, both of them. No one in my family had met her yet, not even a week after we adopted, and we introduced her. My sister became quiet. My brothers made a joke with the same names. The mood softened after a while, but when I was alone with my sister, she started saying that I was petty for choosing the same name as my niece for my dog and caused her unnecessary discomfort since I could have chosen any other name. I explained by saying that it wasn't me who chose it, but my bride. Right after that, the reason for the name. She even said that we could have chosen another name out of respect for her and her niece. I ran out of patience and ended up saying in a harsh way, she was already yelling at me and I hate being yelled at, that if she didn't want to go through that kind of discomfort, she shouldn't have put one of the most common names for a pet, and that there's going to be a dog by that name on every corner. She knows it and she chose it anyway, so she made her bed by naming her that. She left early and we're not on good terms. My parents are begging me to change the name, but it's not my dog and my fiance won't budge, saying that she always said that Bella will be the name of her first pet to everyone. Extra. The name is Mel, the equivalent of honey in English, a nickname for Melissa mostly. In Brazil, at least, Mel is one of the most, if not the most used, name for a pet. I only know my niece with this name, but I know 10 dogs named Mel. So basically, your sister named her the local equivalent of Spot or Rover. Well, darn, that was an entirely bad choice, and the dog's name wasn't up to you, so there's that. Not the jerk. It's almost like a combo of everyone sucks here and no jerks here, because people name pets human names all the time. Bailey, Henry, Colin, even my dog's name is Olive. I don't see why this is such a big deal for all parties involved. I think you and your fiance did do it on purpose, but your sister shouldn't care so much. Am I the jerk for no longer paying my fair share after my boyfriend donated a large amount of insurance money to charity? My boyfriend, 26 male, and his brother, 29 male, had a very bad relationship. His brother was an alcoholic, and he had to pay for insurance as part of his job, and he passed from drinking and falling down the stairs. Insurance paid out $260,000 split between him and his mom. Dad abandoned them, so $130,000 each. He said he didn't want the money and wanted to donate it to a charity. We've been together for 3 years, and for 2 of those years, I've paid the majority of the expenses. I make around $90,000 a year, and he makes $35,000. He also has credit card debt from not making enough to survive on and medical debt. I pay $2,000 of our $2,600 rent, most of the food costs, so he can pay off debt. I will admit, I feel like he can do better, but with his bad upbringing and crappy family, I try to be gentle about nagging him, and he hasn't made any areas of improvement. I've worked hard to get new jobs and increase my salary, and he hasn't, which hurts because I work a lot, 9 to 11 hours a day, while it seems like he gets to follow his passion. He teaches kids gymnastics, which doesn't pay well. I'm an engineer, and it feels like I'm doing all of the work keeping us afloat. So when he got the money, I said we should buy an apartment or use it to pay off his debt or save it or something. But he wants to donate it and I'm really hurt because he doesn't care that by doing that, I'm forced to keep working harder and harder to support us. Especially because our rent got, legally, increased to $2,900. And so if we re-sign for this place, almost half of my money is going to rent. I tried to explain it that we need the money and he can donate a portion, but he needs to take care of our finances first, like I've been doing for years. But he's mad that I want to make use of his brother's blood money and accuses me of only seeing money when it's about doing the right thing. I feel like he only cares about doing the right thing while letting me do all of the hard stuff, like paying all the bills and taking care of real life. His brother passed almost a year ago, and he got the insurance money 6 months ago and hasn't helped out at all. I've already talked about everything I wrote above to him, and he just ignores me. Last month, I found out he donated everything to the American Cancer Society, and while it's a good cause, it doesn't help our finances. I was so angry that I'm left paying for everything so he can feel noble. I've told him he needs to start paying half the rent and food, and I'm no longer subsidizing him. We've had so many fights about this because I only buy enough food for myself, and he gets home with nothing to eat and accuses me of being selfish. He says because I make more, I should be paying what I do. But he got a lot of money, so why doesn't he pay for more things? Even his mother, who wasn't great to him, called and begged him to keep the money rather than donating it. Everyone in my life, my parents, my friends, and my sister, consider him a bum and openly ask me why I'm with him. I don't know if I can answer it positively anymore because I feel used. But am I the jerk for insisting my boyfriend pay half of everything now that he has donated all of his brother's insurance money? Do you want outside permission to dump him? Boom, done and granted. Break up with him. Not the jerk. Anyone who gets money like that and gives it away when they have actual responsibilities is no one to continue making a life with. Bail, flee, scurry, abandon ship. Save yourself, your sanity, and money. Not the jerk. Do not re-sign that lease. Tell him that if he wants to make major financial decisions on his own, then he can cover his major financial expenses on his own. Everyone sucks here. He has huge survivor's guilt, and that can be paralyzing. Been there, done that. Still kind of doing it. That being said, he has responsibilities and debt to pay off that affect more than just him. On the other hand, the fact that you're complaining about his profession and playing the martyr doesn't help things for you. I am guessing, or should I say hoping, that you knew how he mishandled money, that he was in debt, and what his job was before you moved in together. In that case, I say, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. You're the jerk. It's an inheritance, and you don't get to decide how he uses it. It's funny that when this comes up in other posts, the person, usually a dude, who is unhappy how their partner uses the money is called the jerk, but not you. It would be interesting to see how this would have played out if the genders were reversed. Having said that, this guy sounds like a bum, so you're a double jerk if you don't break up with him. Seriously, what's he bringing to the table? You're obviously intelligent. What are you getting out of this? Everyone sucks here, though primarily him. You're right that what he did with the money wasn't wise and that he should have put some of it towards some form of savings or your shared expenses. It was an opportunity and he blew it. He didn't even pay down his debts. No wonder you're resentful of this decision. But darn, you are awfully judgmental of someone working for $35,000 a year. His work teaching those kids is real work. That's almost $17 an hour and is more than a lot of us make. Someone flipping burgers for significantly less than $35,000 a year does real work too. They are not bums. Your response to anyone saying that he's a bum for making a full-time wage should be to shut that crap down, but you seem remarkably okay with hearing it. Honestly, you two don't sound compatible. You have very different financial priorities and goals, and it doesn't seem like there's trust or respect there on either side to allow you guys to work through that. You really can't be expected to ignore what he did either. It is a big deal. He has shown you who he is. Believe him. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for not returning my friend's wallet? So this guy that I hang out with has almost the exact same wallet as I do. Size, color, stitching, just the texture of our wallets is slightly different. So anyways, we were hanging out with some friends and decided to call it a night. While I was grabbing my stuff to leave, I grabbed his wallet by mistake. I had already thrown my own wallet in my gym bag I kept with a change of clothes because I go over straight after work. I got all the way home without realizing it. I live 20 minutes away and it was raining at 11 o'clock at night. So I get a phone call maybe 5 minutes after I get home. Hey man, do you have my wallet? Check my pocket and sure enough it's there. Tell him I'm sorry that I have it. Well, I need you to drive it back to me. He doesn't know this, but I have to be at work at 8 in the morning and leave at 12 the next morning, but I didn't say this. I just ask him if I can bring it to him early tomorrow. I know I messed up. No, bud, you messed up. I work early in the morning and I want to go out, so I need my wallet. You gotta bring it to me, man. You messed up. You've gotta make it right. Dude, it's raining and late. And I don't care, man. That's my property. Well, of course, but we're friends, and you should be able to trust me. That's not the issue. That's my property and you can't keep it. If you don't bring me my wallet, you're no longer allowed at my house. Oh? Well, I guess I'm no longer allowed at your house then. And you can come get your wallet tonight if you really want to go out so badly this late. Otherwise, you can wait until the morning before I go to work. And he decided to come get it. I ended up giving him $20 as well since he drove out. I guess we aren't friends anymore. Am I the jerk? Edit. Someone said to edit this post and talk about the visual impairment of the rain. It was hard to see at points in time. I don't know what you want me to say. It's Florida, April, and if you live in Florida, you know how chaotic the weather can be here. Sunny one spot, pouring the next. A drizzle here and more pouring. So like that, except dark, I guess. Also, if you say he could have gotten hurt coming to get his wallet in the rain, but call me a jerk for not wanting to do the same to either of us, then you're kind of the jerk. You're the jerk. It was your mistake because you took your friend's wallet and didn't make right by it. How hard is this? Wouldn't want to be friends with you either. You're the jerk. How is this even a question? You messed up, took someone's wallet, credit cards, and identification, then asked him to deal with it because it's raining and you need to sleep? Yeah, you're a big jerk. Am I the jerk for going into my sister's house without permission? I, female 32, have a younger sister who's 19 that has a set of twins who are both 1. She got pregnant unexpectedly in high school, and me and my parents have been very supportive of her. My husband owns a townhome complex that he rents out, and we decided to let her live in one of them rent-free since she's in college and we want her to focus on that. The only rule I had for her was to not allow her baby daddy, who's 23, to move in. The guy's pretty much bad news and has a record, and every time he comes into my sister's life, he sets her back. Mentally and academically, and way more stuff. My husband drives past these homes every day, and he always sees my sister's baby daddy's car in the driveway. At first, I thought he was just visiting or babysitting, but my husband left work at 11 p.m. one night, and he told me he had seen the car there still. So my suspicion was he was staying there. I asked my sister first, and she lied to me and said he's never there, which is a lie because his car is there daily. My sister went out of town, and this is where I might be wrong, but I just needed to see for myself. So I used the master key and went into the house, and it's pretty clear that he's living there. Almost all of his stuff was there, and I was honestly furious because that was the only rule I gave her, and we're losing money by helping her. I waited for her to come home, and I confronted her about it, and of course it turned into a screaming match, and she was mad I went into her home without permission. I told her she needs to start paying rent or I'll be evicting her. My mom is on her side and said it was unnecessary that I went into her home when she wasn't there, and that I would be the jerk if I start demanding rent or evict her since I was once her age and I dated horrible dudes too. So, am I the jerk? Edit. No, she does not have a lease for the townhouse since she's not paying anything there. If she were to start paying rent, she would be put on the lease. The only thing that she pays for is cable and electricity. Everything else we pay for. The townhouse is under the ownership of husband's company. Second edit. The argument that some of you guys are making that she's a tenant and I broke rental agreement, I'm gonna repeat myself. She does not have a lease or rental agreement. Technically, the place is still my husband's. She hasn't paid any sort of rent towards the house. She never paid any security deposit. She's legally just a person that stays on our property. The most rights she would potentially have is squatter's rights. Other than that, no. How do you guys think we have spare keys to get in? If she was a traditional renter, we wouldn't have access to a spare like that. Again, my sister has no binding to the property. It's in my husband's name. He's the sole owner of that property. Her ownership to the house is equivalent to someone staying at a hotel for free. Not the jerk. She knew the rules, she broke them. She can pay her way or live by the rules. It's a simple concept, really. Not the jerk. Sounds like she's used to no consequences. Lied to your face. It's not her house if she doesn't pay rent or a mortgage. Legally, you were in the wrong, and so was she. But morally, you're not the jerk. You set one rule in return for repeatedly gifting her a large amount of money each month. It's obvious that she thinks she can do whatever she wants without any consequences, so I would stay the process of evicting her. If your mom is so concerned, she can live with your mom, or your mom can pay for her to rent somewhere else. But I would get her out of that house because she seems like the type to start mistreating it because she's not getting what she wants. And this is why you never let someone you're related to move into a house that you own. It's just asking for trouble. New neighbors have 9 people crammed into a 2-bedroom apartment and are extremely loud all of the time. I've lived in my apartment for almost 2 years, and my experience has been unproblematic so far. I live in the second to last unit, and our old neighbors in the last unit moved out about 2 months ago. We got new neighbors in that unit 3 days ago. For those 3 days, it's been rough. There are at least 5 kids and 4 adults living in the unit. The kids and adults yell almost constantly. Kids are loud, but that doesn't even bother me the most because it can be tuned out. What's bothering me is that the adults have had at least 2 extra vehicles in the parking area. Each unit gets 2 spaces, unassigned, and my partner and I utilize both of ours. And they play loud music for hours while smoking and drinking in their running cars. In the day, they do the same, and the kids run around all the parked vehicles. It's painful to see the alerts on my doorbell cam when the kids are playing around the vehicles, because I bought a new vehicle just last week, so I'm still in the phase where I'm hyper aware of making sure it's taken care of cosmetically and mechanically. On day 2 of new neighbors, one of the kids set my car alarm off somehow. I still can't figure it out, but a scooter was involved. My dilemma is, what do I do? I've already asked one of the adults nicely if they could maybe avoid the kids playing tag with vehicles, but shortly after is when my alarm went off. I don't want to complain to management because the neighbors would obviously know it was me, as I'm the only next-door neighbor aside from the building across from us. Maybe I'm being dramatic or paranoid. I don't know, man. I really feel like a Karen, but this crap is stressful for me, considering I haven't had to worry about this crap since I've moved in. I doubt the management rented to 9 people. Let them know. Karen demands custody of my daughter. I, 30 female, have been taking care of my niece, who's now 7 years old, for the past 5 years, after my sister, who's 32, left her at my doorstep and disappeared. My sister was going through a difficult time with her mental health, and she was unable to provide a stable environment for her daughter. At the time, I didn't hesitate to take my niece in and provide her with a loving and secure home. When my sister left her daughter with me, she didn't leave any contact information, and we had no way of reaching her. We searched for her, but we couldn't find any leads. I was left with no choice but to take full custody of my niece, and I've been her primary caregiver ever since. During the past 5 years, I've watched my niece grow into an amazing kid. I provided her with a stable and secure environment, and I've been there for her during all of the milestones. I've taken her to school, helped her with her homework, taken her to doctor's appointments, and celebrated her birthdays with her. Recently, my sister has reached out to me, and she informed me that she's doing better with her mental health now and wants her daughter back. Although I'm happy that my sister's doing better, I'm not ready to give up custody of my niece. My niece has become a big part of my life, and I love her like she's my own kid. My sister has been threatening to take legal action against me if I don't give her daughter back to her. However, I'm not afraid. My best friend is a lawyer who specializes in custody cases, and I'm prepared to fight for my niece's best interests. I understand that my sister is the biological mother of my niece, but I feel like I'm the only mother figure she's ever known for the past 5 years. I'm torn between my love for my niece and my loyalty to my sister. Am I the jerk for refusing to give her back to my sister? Not the jerk. You're the only mother she's ever known. Fight this with every ounce of strength and every penny you have. Well done, and good luck. If your sister really wants to come back in and build a relationship, she has to understand that she's a stranger to this kid. How about staying overnight to visit you, having park playdates, even just going to a cafe together for lunch? Not the jerk, and in fact, you're amazing for stepping up as a parent. Not the jerk. Has your sister done anything to prove she's better? Honestly, even if she has, you stepped up and took care of her kid. You have effectively become her mother because it's not like she has many memories of her birth mother. Do what's best for your niece, and what's best never involves being moved out of a loving home into an unknown environment. You're the jerk. That is her kid. Why you playing games with her like that? My mom tried the same stuff with my babies when I had her watch them for a while when I had to take care of some other things. Then when it was time to get my kids back, she trying to say that I'm not fit to be a mother and she was going to keep them. No way. These are my kids and I'm their mother. She trying to say because I got locked up for a quick minute that I'm not a good mom. I was working the streets trying to keep food on the table for my babies. That's why I got locked up. Eventually, the authorities did take them away because they said my place was not clean enough. They literally wanted to be spotless, no crumbs anywhere, smelling like pine sol. That's not how normal people live. But I at least know that my jerk mom was not the one who got them in the end. I'm pregnant now with my third, and this time it will be different. Sure it will, baby mama. Sure it will. I lost it on my brother-in-law for telling my son to be the man of the house. My husband, Dan, grew up in a single-parent household. His dad passed when he was young. His older brother, Martin, was definitely made to act like a parent and became the man of the house. Together, Dan and I have 3 kids, Sydney, who's 12, Gabe, who's 10, and Charlotte, who's 3. Unfortunately, Dan passed 3 months ago. It's been a terrible struggle trying to balance my grief, my kids, on top of the rest of my responsibilities. I have a great support system, so I've been cognizant to make sure my babies still have a childhood. I always said I wouldn't do what my mother-in-law did. Recently, I was having a bit of a tough time. Charlotte was sick, Sydney is in about a million activities, and the housework was piling up. Martin's wife, Rachel, offered to come by and help me out. She generously cleaned the house and looked after Charlotte while I ran Sydney to her activities. When I arrived back home, I found Martin and Gabe in the kitchen. Martin was telling him that it shouldn't have gotten to this stressful point and he should be helping me more. He told him that he was the man of the house and it was up to him to step up. I cut in and told Gabe not to listen to his uncle, that he's just a kid and it's not his job to take over for his father. Rather, it's his job to play, go to school, and just be a kid. I sent him to go play. I tore into Martin. I asked him how dare he say that to my son. I said he may have been treated like this, but he will not do the same to my son. I said if he pulled crap like that again, he'd never see my kids again. Martin told me I was being ungrateful. He was only trying to help. He said more than anything, he was defending his wife as it's not her job to help me. I reminded him I never asked Rachel for help. She offered. Martin said she wouldn't have if I wasn't complaining about how hard my life is. Ever since, Dan's family have been telling me what a jerk I am. They say this is all Martin knows and I was way too harsh on him, especially threatening to cut him off. They told me I need to get my stuff together. My mother-in-law especially thinks I need to suck it up and expect my kids, not just Gabe, but Sydney too, to help me with Charlotte. I told her off and that only made it worse. Everyone is accusing me of alienating Dan's family, which I'm not trying to do. Am I the jerk? Edit to clarify. My kids do have chores and help around the house. The work in question was things that are out of their age bracket and were my responsibility. Thus why I was falling behind, considering I also have to take care of the kids, drive them places, and do more things that are not age appropriate or their job. Not the jerk. You take those healthy boundaries for your kids and you defend them with your life. It's something your brother-in-law unfortunately hasn't experienced, and that's not his fault, but he is about to learn. We break these cycles. We don't perpetuate them. Not the jerk. You talking to Rachel is called venting. Martin was deflecting to remove the light from his mistake. There are some things the kids could do to help. Picking up their toys, putting dishes in the sink or away, small things, run a vacuum. It teaches life skills. I get why you blew up at what he said. Kids don't need to be a man of the house. Add to that you're trying to juggle 3 kids, keep the home afloat, and probably haven't gotten to grieve properly. Not the jerk. Man of the house is such a stupid idea. It's honestly laughable. Fortunately, we live in the modern age where, to be honest, we don't need to have a man in the house at all. Most men now don't even know how to do traditional manly things like work on cars or do house repairs. All they want to do these days is play video games and eat Cheetos. This is why I stopped dating them a long time ago, and most of my friends have too. You're the jerk. Your brother-in-law is right. Right now, your son is the man of the house, no matter how much you may dislike that wording. He has 2 sisters and a mother who are going to be depending on him. He won't have the option to goof off and be a typical lazy entitled teen. He's going to need to mature quickly and become the man that you all need him to be. This is what I had to do growing up. My father walked out on us when I was only 9, but I had younger siblings who looked up to me. Sadly, I can tell by the way you're explaining this whole thing that he's really going to struggle growing up in this home. Just please get him in sports if he's not already. Without learning to compete, young men don't stand a chance. And since you seem to think your brother-in-law doesn't know what he's talking about, please try to find a smart man with good morals who can guide your son down the right path. Just as there are things only a mother can teach her daughter, there are things that only a father can teach his son. This used to be common knowledge, but sadly in our current climate, common knowledge isn't so common anymore. Not the jerk. And maybe it's best we go ahead and cut off Dad's family, at least until you figure out how your life will be moving forward. You owe nothing to them, so go ahead and hit that block button and figure out your family. Forget them. Refuse to accommodate my disability? Okay then. Let me give a little backstory first. I started working at Walmart before lockdown happened as a full-time apparel employee. I happen to have grand mal epilepsy that started in my mid-20s, around 2015. I'm also quite understanding of other people's disabilities and often try to work with them, since I can relate to having issues. Example, I use hand gestures and/or writing for deaf coworkers. This helps with basic communication that most hearing people don't bother with, and it's normally appreciated that I do this. I got to stay in that exact same position throughout 2020 and part of 2021. Naturally, I had to still go to work as an essential employee, deal with idiots, and worry about both of my parents who also work in retail. I managed to get myself promoted to the digital shopping department by transferring stores and pointing out certain key skills I have that are really useful in retail in 2021. I had politely asked for the minimal requirements from my department manager of 1. Being able to take medication at work, and 2. Not having to bring orders out to cars because I lack what's known as an aura. Basically summed up here, I can't sense seizures coming. Though I don't have them very often due to medication, a grand mal plus a busy parking lot at work seems like a bad idea. My department manager agreed to this condition as long as I did other work to help out with the digital team instead, which was completely reasonable to ask for in my opinion. So, as per the request, for a lot of closing shifts I'd work, I'd take up phone duty, pre-set up the orders to go out, and/or do returns for the department. The issue here was that the personal department person, she kept forgetting about my condition repeatedly over the next year. This was despite me bringing in medical notes from my neurologist for my file, pointing this out more than once on why I shouldn't be scheduled solo and having the department manager talk to her. After over a year, she scheduled me completely solo for a closing, which I noticed and texted my department lead about. I did the official suggestion of hers, despite my thoughts that corporate Walmart was likely even dumber than her on basic disabilities. I only asked for the exact same things I asked my department manager for, both very, very logical and minimal accommodation requests. As I suspected, Walmart's Sedgwick said, "We can't do this unless you change departments." All departments suggested either wouldn't work due to time and/or location, or they were back at the same level as apparel, which would lower my position and pay. Sedgwick put me on an automatically placed LOA after a few days without my permission. This was to allow me to figure out what I should do over the next 4 months. I called up and asked the Walmart Benefit Center about this. As of late 2019, Walmart signed all of their employees up for a free to the employees short-term disability insurance without officially telling them. I filed to get this insurance to pay for my entire LOA and was given the short-term disability payments, with back pay for exactly when they put me on leave. I'd rather have my paycheck and insurance stick around for a while, despite Walmart and Sedgwick being idiotic. I quit Walmart after having gotten holiday employment with Target for 2 months at that point. Am I the jerk for buying all of the red Gatorade at the store, even though a mom wanted some for her kids? I'm a big fan of Gatorade, and I have a specific reason for buying it. I have low blood sugar and dehydration issues, and my doctor recommended that I drink Gatorade to help keep my electrolytes in balance. However, I'm also neurodivergent, and it's hard for me to change things up and try new flavors, so I only buy the red kind as it's the only one I like. Yesterday, I went to the grocery store on their stock day, and I saw that they had a fresh shipment of Gatorade. I was so happy because I've been running low at home. I grabbed the bottles of the red flavor and put them in my cart. As I was walking away, a mom with 2 kids approached me and asked if I could spare a few bottles of the red Gatorade. She explained that it was her kids' favorite color and that they were out of stock at their local store. I felt bad for her, but I explained that I needed the Gatorade for my own health reasons and that I couldn't spare any. The mom got really upset and started to yell at me, saying that I was being selfish and that I should think about others. I tried to explain my situation again, but she wouldn't listen and kept telling me I could just take the blue Gatorade instead. I just started to ignore her after a while, but eventually she stormed off. Now I'm wondering if I was in the wrong. Should I have just given her some of the Gatorade, even though I needed it for my own health? Or was I justified in keeping it all for myself? Am I the jerk? Edit. I should clarify since this is coming up in the comments. I didn't really want to go into specifics, but here we go. No, my doctor did not recommend specifically red Gatorade for this issue. He recommended Gatorade. The red Gatorade is needed because I deal with OCD and have issues with change to my routine and trying new things. It can be debilitating to deal with panic attacks induced by such a small problem and can remove my focus from my process of treating the bigger problems with my OCD. So I've chosen, at the advice of a therapist, to allow myself to stick to this small routine and avoid further disruption during my process of getting better. I wish my food aversion was something I could just turn off, but I can't, and it's a process to work through these things for me. I hope people in the comments can understand that. I'm not trying to intentionally be a jerk and take things from other people. I just have a fear of not being able to keep the little things in my routine, and that feeling trumps a lot of things for me. If you don't struggle with OCD, be grateful. You're the jerk. OP states in the comments and main post that the drinks were just restocked and also that he was taking literally all of them. Doesn't matter if it's Gatorade, insulin, or toilet paper. Hoarding all of the supply when you, 1, clearly have enough for a while, and 2, there's someone else in the store wanting to buy some, makes you a jerk. The kid could be neurodivergent also, you don't know. And I guarantee you if you arrived and this mom did the same thing and took literally all of your special drink as soon as it was restocked, you would be infuriated. If you really can only do red and need to bulk order it, work with the store manager or order online. Often you can get up to a pallet for a lower price than on the shelves just by scheduling a special order. I'll probably get a lot of hate for this, but you're the jerk. You are indeed selfish for buying a store out of its entire stock of a product on stock day because that means they will be out of that product for anyone who comes to buy it until they restock. That lady shouldn't have yelled at you, obviously, but I do understand her frustration. Just a suggestion, but if your need is really that great, you need to speak to the store manager because they'd likely be happy to order extra of that flavor for you. Am I the jerk for suing my mother and her husband over child support payments? I have a terrible dog allergy, and during my childhood and teenage years, my mother decided it would be smart to not only get one, but 4. Through that, she managed to completely isolate me from my family, and I couldn't leave my room whenever I was home since the dogs were allowed everywhere and I couldn't stay in the room with them without being unable to breathe and constantly sneezing. I lived like that for 4 years before I had enough and moved on to my university campus. My mother fought for me to stay, not because of me, but because she would miss my dad's child support payments since she was legally required to give them to me now. Our relationship became pretty frosty, but at one point we sat down and had a conversation, and I thought things were now okay. She continues to pay me monthly, and I have a decent job, so I managed to find a place of my own. Well, over the last few months, I found out my mother wasn't paying the full support to me. It was about 200 euros less than it should be, which she kept. I confronted her and told her that I need the money for uni and my apartment, but she claimed what she's already paying me is more than enough and that I need to get my spending habits under control. I told her I can't work full-time because of my degree, but she simply didn't care. Since that money legally belongs to me, I've decided to talk to a lawyer about suing her for the amount she owes me and the amount that she kept to herself all my life. I went through with it, and we are now settling this through court. My mom's husband begged me to drop it and said he would pay me around 1,000 euros as compensation and that I need to think about the fact that they still have to pay off their house, that the dogs need food, that he has to support my sisters, etc. Even my dad told me I was being too harsh on my mother. I simply don't care about that woman who's treated me like this for my whole life. Am I the jerk? Edit. I have 3 sisters and I'm the oldest brother. The only thing I'm concerned about is them losing in the process because I know I have to go no contact once this is settled. She's already been calling me nonstop and I blocked her number, and she's been using my sister to contact me. She's a really good manipulator, so I'm really worried and wondering if this is all worth it. As to some of the questions I keep seeing, my sisters are 18, 12, and 9. The oldest is my stepsister, daughter of my mom's new husband. The other two are my half-siblings. They mean the world to me. I feel very protective of them, and I did everything I could in my situation to be a good brother to them. At the moment, I'm also trying to support my oldest younger sister with her wish to move out. She might move in with me. I hope I can keep contact through them in secret or through my grandma. I'm very scared of losing my youngest sister. To the Germans in the comments, I don't get that benefit. My parents are both really well off, and I tried multiple times explaining my situation. I don't get anything that would support me. I applied for this other benefit, and I'm waiting for the result of that. I've been working since I was 16, and before moving out, my mom did take part of my money for rent, so there is a pattern. My mom managed the child support, and my dad is a very, let's just keep it the way it's always been type of guy. So he just kept paying my mom and trusted her to give it to me, even when I told him I don't get anything. I'm very happy with the rational comments I'm receiving because I catch myself still trying to excuse her behavior. I love my parents dearly. I love my family. I don't want to be in this situation, but at the same time, I don't see what else I can do. Not the jerk. I find it comical that you were told to get your spending under control by the people who are stealing your money to be able to afford dog food for the dogs that are the reason you had to move in the first place. Not the jerk. Let's see. She was knowingly endangering and confining you with her dogs and then stealing from you. Go on with full force. Not the jerk. What your mom's husband and dad expect from you is being the bigger person. But ask yourself, is your mom ever going to make it up to you? Will she be thankful to you for letting it drop? Is your relationship with your mom even worth it to you anymore? I mean, I absolutely love my dog. I would quit a relationship over my dog. But getting a dog when your kid is allergic? What nonsense is that? No judgment. I'm confused how someone over 18 is supposed to be getting child support, mandatory from a parent. OP. The law here states that parents have to pay child support until I either finish an internship and have a full-time job or when I finish my first university degree. Since I am in uni and under 25, they still have to pay. Am I the jerk for not babysitting at the cookout? I, 27 male, was at a backyard cookout with some friends and coworkers. So the ages were late 20s to early 40s. It was a family-friendly event, so people brought their kids. They were playing in the yard while most of the adults hung out in the backyard deck. And like always, the parents saw other adults in the area and decided to just walk away and go inside. I don't know why this is a thing a lot of parents tend to do. Parents, why do you just walk away at outings and expect others to watch your kids for you? I don't get it. I could see if it were your immediate family, but even then, I would warn someone that I was not going to be watching them. It was near the end of the night, so some people were gone. It was also getting dark and colder, so people were inside. The kids were still running around the play area. I decided to go home. I went inside and said goodbye to the host. Then I got in my car out front and was on my phone for a minute, and someone angrily walked up and asked me why I left the backyard. They said I was back there and they were counting on me to watch the kids. Note that this was never even said to me. They just went inside and said nothing. I was on the deck, and at no point in the night was I ever paying attention to them. Nothing dangerous happened. The parents just saw me walk into my car and freaked out. I told her it's not my job to watch your kids, but I probably would have stuck around if I were asked. I was just sitting on the deck, drinking and minding my own business. I had already been going back and forth from outside to socialize the whole night like everyone else. Not sure why I was the one singled out. There were times when another person happened to be outside and I was inside. Did they assume we were taking shifts? I don't get the mentality of parents, but maybe I'm the jerk here. Edit. I don't think it's clear, so I'll clarify. I had no knowledge of being on kid duty. The backyard is large and open and leads into the forest. I was on the small deck by the house. At no point in the night was I watching or listening for them. The whole night I was periodically going inside and outside freely. Never considered them because I assumed the responsible parents were keeping an eye out. Dude, you're definitely not the jerk. You're not a babysitter. You should not be held in any position to watch their kids. Not the jerk. It took me a while to figure out none of the kids were even yours because their reaction makes no sense at all. Just assuming someone else is watching your kids for you is pretty ridiculous. Am I the jerk for calling out a family member for giving fake gifts? For graduation 3 years ago, my uncle, 53 male, gave me, 25 female, a $100 gift card. But when I went to use it, the teller said that there was only $6 left on the card. I assumed it was a mistake and didn't say anything to him. For Christmas 2 years ago, he gave me a $50 gift card, which was $25 over what the limit was per person. When I went to use it, the teller said it had never been activated. I again didn't say anything, but I thought it was odd that it happened twice. Last year, I finished grad school, and my uncle loudly announced to everyone at my party that I should get an email with a digital gift card and that it should help me pay for my new furnishings when I move. I checked my email that night and had nothing in my inbox or spam. I waited a few days, then texted him and mentioned I didn't get an email, just to make sure he had used the correct email address. He never responded. I finally hit the limit this Christmas when he handed me a $100 Visa gift card and announced that he had been doing well at work and wanted to be generous. I thanked him and checked the balance later and saw there was only around $3 on the card. The next day, when my grandma said she was going to the mall, I said I would go too to use the gift card. I tried to use it with her standing next to me, and when the teller said there were insufficient funds, she was shocked. I logged into the website where you can check the balance and showed her that the card had been spent months ago and how little remained. She seemed confused, and when we got to the car, I mentioned that this happened every single time Uncle gave me a gift card. She got upset and called him and told him off for bragging about being generous but giving out fake or used cards. He later texted me and said I was wrong for calling him out in front of his mother and that he had been having financial issues he wanted to keep quiet. I responded by saying I gave him the chance to fess up the time before about the email gift card, but he wouldn't answer, and that if he was having financial issues, he shouldn't have bragged about going over the prescribed gift amount and just actually spent $25. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. At the very least, he should have told you personally afterwards so you don't look embarrassed in the store. Not the jerk. If he had financial issues, he can choose not to get you a gift or to get one of much less value. He doesn't have to say why in front of people, but using you to appear generous and hide his financial issues in front of others or whatever, nope, that's not okay. HOA neighbor keeps harassing me, finally gets a taste of her own medicine. I bought my first house in 1999 and I wanted DirecTV. I put up a satellite dish, which happened to be behind a privacy fence. I also knew the FCC ruling that HOAs couldn't prevent you from putting up a dish due to some issue with home builders who would make shady deals with cable companies to force homeowners to go with a specific company. I figured I wouldn't have any issues since it was behind a fence anyway. I got a knock at my door the next day, and it was my neighbor from across the cul-de-sac telling me she's on the board of the HOA. Your dish is in violation and must be removed. This was my first encounter with her. I politely explained the law as I knew it and told her to have a nice day. We didn't speak again, and she ended up moving out soon. Well, it turns out she didn't move out and was just renting to some other lady that I never spoke to, and the HOA lady moved back a year later. There was an easement behind my house, which was properly mowed when I moved in. I would hit golf balls down there with my wedge, and my neighbor was into archery and used it as his range. By the second summer I lived there, it was overgrown and an eyesore. I couldn't even see the creek just behind my house anymore. One weekend, I borrowed my dad's utility trailer, and I spent 3 days clearing out our little section behind the houses, hauling all of the debris away, probably 2 trips a day. My arms were covered in cuts from the briars, and apparently I was also dealing with sumac, poison ivy, and some other stuff because by Monday I was having an allergic reaction so badly that I went to the doctor to get a shot. Laid up in the house all day, and I got a knock at the door. It's the neighbor again. Apparently there's a rule that you cannot store a trailer in the driveway for more than 3 days, and this was day 4. I needed to remove it by the end of the day or face a $500 fine. She handed me a paper listing the rule, and I considered just paying the fine, but instead I angrily drove an hour each way to return my dad's trailer after spending half the day already waiting in a hospital lobby. I got home after dark. What struck me as odd was that there was a list of things you couldn't store in your driveway: personal watercraft, boats, trailers, etc. The odd part was that motorcycle was listed on there. I don't ride one myself, but I thought it was a totally reasonable thing to keep in a driveway. After I finished all of this work, this woman would routinely walk through my yard without asking, but since she was taking her grandkid to play in the creek, I never said anything, even though it bothered me she never asked. A year or so later, I wanted to sell the house and move into something bigger. I had talked to a realtor already, and I was getting things tidied up to have the house shown. As I was cleaning out a drawer, I noticed that paper the HOA lady had given me, and I remembered the part about motorcycles being listed. You see, the HOA lady had started dating an older gentleman, and he had moved in with her. Turns out he rode a Harley, which was always parked in her driveway. She was home, so I walked over there and politely informed her about the violation. The next day, the motorcycle was parked on her back porch, the one she bragged about to everyone who would listen, so she could tell them how much it cost. I laughed to myself, but then I remembered the part about it needing to be behind a fence. Another knock at the door, and within a few days, a fence company was building a 6-foot privacy fence which completely hid her fancy new deck. My realtor had been on my case for at least a week about needing to put up a for sale sign, so as soon as the fence was finished, I told her it was okay. I sold the house quickly and moved out at the end of the month. Oh, and by the way, the fence was completely hideous and looked out of place because of the way her lot was shaped. Am I the jerk for saying no to my boss after she asked me to watch her kids this weekend? So I'm 22, female, and my sister is getting married this coming weekend, and I will be gone Thursday through Sunday. I've had this known that I was going to be gone for 7 months. 7 months. I would even remind every month or so, just so I knew that she knew. I nanny 2 amazing kids who are 6 and 8. This is the first time I have ever asked to have some time off. My boss has always been like, "Oh yeah, sure, sounds like a beautiful wedding." However, I got a text 2 hours ago saying she really needed me this weekend and she couldn't find anyone else. I was upset, but I know how to act calm since, it's my job to stay happy and calm. I texted her back a quick apology, but said I really didn't want to miss my sister's wedding as she's my only sibling. Well, boss woman went off the deep end and said that if I didn't show up to watch her kids this weekend, that I won't have a job come Monday. I replied with this exactly. "Look, I'm so sorry that you're having a hard time looking for someone to cover. I can reach out to a few nanny friends I have and see if any of them would like to pick this up. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment for my sister, and if it means I will lose my job, then sadly I will have to accept that. I love this job and your kids, and I hope we can work something out. I think it would devastate them, but you do what you need to, and I will accept that." She threw a few insults at me and said I'm abandoning them. I don't know what to do. I don't want to get a new job because I work so well with these 2 kiddos. My mom told me I was a jerk for so quickly accepting that I might get fired and told me that work just sucks sometimes and you gotta suck it up. Mom says I should have been an adult and just missed my sister's wedding. I don't know, should I? Am I really that big of a jerk for saying no? Edit, just to clarify, me and my mom don't have a good relationship. I didn't ask her for her advice. She was in the room with my sister, and as I was venting to my sister, I would have gone no contact at 18 if it wasn't for my dad. Can we please stop talking about it now? I've dealt with so much crap from her, but that's for another day. Not the jerk. Start looking for a new job now, and when they ask when you can start, list it for the day you're done with the wedding festivities. This woman must have a lot of backup options for childcare if she can so casually threaten your job like that and talk to you in that way. She must be used to getting her way to do such a 180 on you like that. You can be the one to teach her this valuable lesson about valuing an employee nice enough to give extensive notice in advance when they won't be able to be on the job. After all, you gave her plenty of notice along with reminders, and the fact that she's in the lurch now is because she didn't respect you and your personal time enough to make plans for this time months ago. While it's true that you do sometimes have to suck it up as an adult, that time is not when you've given your employer more than half a year's notice that you'll need this specific time off. It's very much being an adult to prioritize your sister's wedding over a job that doesn't value you enough to respect that you had arranged this time off months ago. Ugh, it makes me so sad that OP's mom is this brainwashed too. Does she really think OP is in the wrong here? This fear that you can be fired any moment for not doing whatever insane thing your boss asks of you is so real for a lot of people because it's true. You can be fired at any moment for almost any reason / no reason in the good old greatest country on earth. I'm glad more people are realizing they don't need to accept this crap. OP, you're part of a changing labor movement. Learn your worth now and don't let your next employer treat you like this. You know it was an empty threat too. What is she going to do on Monday if she fires you? Between that and the yelling and the guilt trip, You know she's desperate for help. Nobody likes being taken advantage of. Rich Karen insults my blue-collar husband, so I made her cry. I, 34 female, have a little sister who's 30, who's married to a wealthy businessman in our state. I'm also married. Both my husband and I work blue-collar jobs. We have very different lifestyles. I personally don't feel comfortable relying on someone to do everything for me, and I'm independent. She, on the other hand, relies on my brother-in-law for everything and doesn't work at all. We aren't close and never have been for other reasons. She lives hours away and recently was in town for a charity event and was staying with me for a week. Immediately, she was rude and judgmental of the way our household runs. She told me it's sad that my 2 boys share a room and my husband has a game room for himself. I was shocked and told her that the boys are 4 and 2 and they don't need their own huge fancy rooms, and that his game room is half the size of a standard room. She had more to say about other things we did in the house, acting like she's so much better than me and feels bad for me and the kids. We grew up together in an extremely poor household. I don't understand why she was acting like we didn't experience way worse. She was rude the whole stay. My husband even told me she asked him why he doesn't cook or spend time with the boys after he just worked a 10-hour shift. Coming from a lady with a live-in nanny and a chef, I was shocked and appalled by her attitude. I confronted her the next day about chastising my husband, and she said she did it because she felt bad that I did most of the work in the house and he barely did anything. I told her she doesn't do anything. She doesn't work, she doesn't watch her kids, she doesn't clean or cook. All she does is shop and go to charity events, and that my husband works more in a day shift than she has in years, and to stop acting like she's better than us. She started playing the victim, crying, saying that she was standing up for me and that she just wants me to not feel burnt out, and I told her that I'm sure her husband wishes someone would do the same for him since all she does is waste his money. This is when she starts acting all high and mighty. She has the nerve to say I'm jealous of her and that she doesn't waste money, she donates it, and she's worked with this and that organization and she works and has a job. I told her that her job is being a gold digger. Even if she does donate money, it's not hers since she didn't make it. My husband heard and he laughed, and she said if she's a gold digger, then my husband is a jerk, and that I'm the same, and she left and blocked me, saying that I'm a jerk. She told our brother, and he says I am a jerk since I judge my sister for not doing real work, while my husband's only job is working, and I also work and do everything else, so technically if she's a freeloader, he's even worse. Am I the jerk? She came into my house and insulted us. You're the jerk. She had a point about your husband not spending time with the kids. Also about the boys sharing a room while he has a game room. If he has time for games, he has time to be a father too. Your husband seems useless in the household. Why are you so judgmental against her for being rich? Why does it bother you so much that she has a nanny and a cook? I mean, I get it. Your husband is useless and you probably are burnt out. But honey, that's not your sister's fault. In fact, she seemed to actually stand up for you. Reddit, the only place where husbands who work 10-hour shifts are considered useless. Her husband has a room dedicated to gaming when their kids have to share a room. She works, but also does 100% of the housework, cooking, and childcare, and her husband refuses to even spend time with the kids. Sorry, I'm confused. Why is OP obsessively defending her useless husband? And why exactly is her sister a jerk? You're the jerk. All your husband does is work a 9 to 5 like you do. Then you come home and do the cooking and childcare while your husband is tired from working, just like you are. Your sister observes how you do most of the household tasks and sees the imbalance of it. Considering you're both doing it 50-50, he should be cooking and doing childcare as well. Since he's not, he's a gold digger since he's getting free labor from a cook and nanny. You, just like your sister is a gold digger for getting free labor as well. Looks like you're a hypocrite. Everyone sucks here. Your sister should not be spending her entire stay with you being disrespectful and pointing out all of the problems she sees, and it's fair of you to be upset about that. You suck here because your response was entirely uncalled for. Obviously, her husband doesn't mind being the main breadwinner for their household, and that works for him. And while it may not give her an income of her own, charity work is both real and important work. That being said, she had a point. The way you word your post indicates that you don't dispute that while you and your husband both work, you end up doing the majority of the childcare and housework. Working 10-hour shifts is no excuse to come home and not spend any time with your kids and family or help out around the house as best you can. You sound jealous. I get it, your sister lives a life where she gets everything. She doesn't work, she has help. Heck, I don't even know your sister and I'm jealous. The fact is, she was taking up for you. Was it her place? Nope, but I can't say I don't agree with her. First off, your younger son could use the game room as a bedroom, giving the boy more room to play. You really don't think it's okay for a 2 and a 4-year-old to be sharing a room? Calm down, Mr. Reddit. Don't forget about your blood pressure. Okay. My deceased father-in-law stole our identities and put us in massive debt. My husband, male 30, and I, female 27, are preparing to buy our first home. We both work full-time, making above minimum wage, but not enough that either of us can get a home with our single income. Yesterday, in a conversation with the bank, we were informed that there are 4 collections accounts in my husband's name, all going back to 2018. Power, internet, and 2 credit cards. After a few hours, we were able to link each one of these accounts to his father's previous address. The bill is just shy of $6,000. After multiple conversations, we've realized the only way to clear this debt from causing issues to his credit rating is to file a police report for fraud. His father passed suddenly last September, and my husband doesn't want to tarnish his father's name and is afraid his family will look down on him for doing this. He's on the fence of how this will look if it gets out. I look at it differently. We took a massive hit paying for the funeral. Father-in-law had no money and no life insurance. I know it's his dad, but it will take us years to recover from the implications of this. None of the recovery agencies are willing to give us a bill paid in full, and even if we do pay this debt, we will lose the down payment that we've busted our tails to raise again over the past 7 months. We aren't even close to having the buying power we had last September because we only saved about half of our original down payment. So, am I the jerk for asking him to make a police report? It's not an ideal situation, but how much more can I let his father's poor financial decision in life impact our future, especially now that he's gone? Clarification for some of the repeated questions. As some of you might have gathered, yes, my husband has heritage reasons for trying to honor his father even in passing. He's also a junior. He's an only child and was raised only by his mother. His father did not sign his birth certificate, but was a large part of his life. His father's estate has gone to probate court to be settled. Because of his accent and his dislike for confrontation, my husband actually had me speak to everyone yesterday. Collection agencies did not have our address or his phone number, which is why they haven't hounded us. Everyone I spoke to has told me they have had no success in reaching him since they acquired the debt. So no, he wasn't hiding something, he just didn't know about it. We've had complications with the credit bureau for the last 3 years trying to access my husband's credit report. We've had to go to the police station and show several pieces of ID, send in letters to confirm his identity. It took the banks to get us to do everything again to resolve the issue. Originally, we thought it was because there was no activity on his credit report. Now we know that at least one account used his father's social with my husband's date of birth and created issues. Finally, for those people who want to know what the price of my bad feelings are, I just paid $18,000 out of pocket to make sure this man wasn't buried in a cardboard box. I loved my father-in-law, and he had told us about his financial struggles. We would have helped him. This isn't even about the money. Yesterday, I asked every agency if they would just put paid in full next to the bill, and I would pay it off. I'll save the money again. They wouldn't take the collections off his credit score. It's not 6 months worth of saving that I'm concerned about. It's 3 to 5 years that the record can stick to his account, which will stop us from purchasing any time in the near future. Finally, my husband needed a minute, but he's called me today at lunch and said he has to do what's right for our future. He's going to go forward with the fraud report this evening. Thank you all for the reassurance. Not the jerk. He tarnished his own reputation by committing identity theft and fraud. You're living and need your credit cleared. Your father-in-law doesn't care anymore. Don't bother telling the family. They likely will never even know about it unless you tell them. Maybe he was messing up your credit trying to help you with buying a house. Have you not seen what's going on in the news lately? Let's not talk about that, Karen. Some of us worked hard to get an 800 credit score and we shouldn't be punished for it. Am I the jerk for making my husband miss his daughter's prom? I, 36, female, have been married to my husband Josh, who's 40, for 10 years. We have a 9-year-old daughter named Lauren together, and my stepdaughter Riley is 18. About a year ago, I booked a vacation with my girlfriends for one of their bachelorette parties. It's this weekend in Tennessee. We leave Thursday and we come back on Monday. This weekend, Lauren has a cheerleading competition that Josh is taking her to. Lauren is required to have a guardian there the whole time, and she needs to arrive early Friday and leaving Sunday. We did ask the cheer director if a friend's mom could bring her and my husband could meet her thereafter, but they said no. and if she's not there for the check-in time, she can't compete that weekend. Riley's prom is Friday. Riley did not have a junior prom, and her school only has senior prom. We found out the date of prom after school started, and the trip had already been booked and paid for. My husband is now going to be missing Riley's prom to take Lauren to her competition. Riley thinks this is extremely unfair and that we're playing favorites since she'll never get this chance again, and she wants pictures with her dad and sister. She's been messaging my husband about it. Lauren doesn't want to miss her competition and risk her spot on the team. My husband asked if I'd cancel my trip, and I told him no. The trip has been booked, paid for, and I also need a break. He takes breaks and trips as well. My husband and I are now fighting because he feels like no matter what he does, he's stuck. He's already told Lauren that he'll be taking her to the cheer competition, which means he'll be missing prom. So, am I the jerk? Update. I've decided to stand my ground that I will not be canceling my trip. I will be getting on the plane in the morning. We all sat down and talked about the weekend. He explained he'll be taking Lauren to her competition while Riley's mother takes pictures with her at prom. He said he taught the girls about commitment and he's not going to have Lauren's absence have the team forfeit. He told her we could do pictures if she wanted to put her dress on a second time, but she said it won't be the same and she's upset. Riley is upset with her father and thinks he's favoring Lauren. No jerks here. Whoever's organizing the cheerleader competition is the jerk. There's no reason they should restrict another member of the family from bringing her or simply allowing her to go with another parent and a permission slip. You're the jerk, as is your husband. Proms happen once. Your 9-year-old has plenty of cheerleading competitions. The focus should be on the once-in-a-lifetime deal. No wonder your stepdaughter is upset. Do better. I don't get why everyone's acting like an adult's world needs to revolve around prom. I remember when I went to prom. I don't remember the hour at my house beforehand where the parents insisted on taking photos. I know for a fact some of the parents weren't there for the photos because they had to work or do other stuff. It's prom, not a wedding or a graduation. Prom is about the kids spending time with each other. It's not a family event. You can tell how many teens are on this sub by all of the prom is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Give me a break and get an ounce of perspective, people. He's not missing Riley's wedding. He's not missing her graduation. He's missing a photo op. And this, and so many commenters here, are completely ridiculous. In the grand scheme of things, this is so boringly low stakes, and you are not the jerk. I'd forgive Riley for being a moody teen about it, and I wish Lauren well in her competition. You're the jerk. I'm sorry, but a bachelorette trip should not come before your kid and your husband being a good father to his daughter. Part of being a parent means you won't always get to go where you want. Take your daughter to her cheer competition and he can go to prom pics. Not the jerk. Honestly, I fail to understand why it's such a big deal for Riley to have photos with her dad for prom. Yeah, prom is a once-in-a-lifetime event, but her dad's not going to be attending the once-in-a-lifetime event even if he was free. She literally just wants him for 10 minutes of photos when her sister needs him for a competition a whole bunch of other people are counting on her for. I think it's ridiculous to expect OP to cancel her trip, which has been paid for a year in advance, so a girl can have 10 minutes of photos. Honestly, everyone here seems to be jumping on the Riley is right, everyone does favor Lauren train without really stopping to think about the info we have. Well, what would you do if you were OP? Would you cancel your trip and take your daughter to a cheer competition or not? Please let us know. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for our family. Am I the jerk for not allowing my husband to make our son a true junior? After having 2 girls, we found out we're finally having a boy. We are both on board with him sharing his father's name. We'll use SpongeBob here. However, a cultural difference has put a wedge between us. My culture inputs the wife's last name before the husband's last name. So if Squidward Tentacles was marrying Sandy Cheeks and they had a kid named James, his name would be James Cheeks Tentacles. My husband wants our son to have his exact name plus Junior to be the legal name, SpongeBob SquarePants Jr. I guess I'll be Patrick Star here, would like to continue the family tradition of my maiden name being used, SpongeBob Star SquarePants Jr. He is absolutely furious at this and is saying that I'm trying to rob him of his birth certificate matching his son's, that if I add my family name, our son won't be a true junior. Though I understand this is obviously a cultural difference, I don't see why a compromise can't be made here, since Star will likely get lost in official paperwork, and our son will more commonly be referred to as SpongeBob SquarePants Jr. I also feel like our son gets my husband's entire name, and I would like for my family's legacy to be included. To add to this, Both of our daughters' names follow the first name star SquarePants pattern, and my son would be the only sibling without it. I understand a father and a son having a special connection, but I feel like I shouldn't be dismissed just because I'm not the same as them. Am I the jerk? Edit. When I say finally having a boy, it's because we had 2 girls. If we already had 2 boys, I'd finally be having a girl. I don't think it's odd to want to experience having both. Edit 2. My husband has no juniors or seniors tradition in his family. There is no previous instance of this. He would be the first. Edit 3. Just because it's been asked a few times. My daughter's names were actually his ideas that I ended up loving. There was no compromise from either side. It was an easy, open conversation that stretched over the months of pregnancy, which is sort of why this rigidness for his junior has caught me by surprise. Edit 4. I didn't expect this much traction. Thank you for all the different perspectives. I had no idea so many juniors were so unhappy. Everyone's culture is different, though, as we see. This thread gave me a lot to speak on and to take in when my husband and I revisit the conversation. And thanks to everyone who loved my SpongeBobbiness. Goofy Goober Gang. Not the jerk. I find it cringy when someone wants to put their child's name with their same name. Even more so when they literally want to put Junior on the legal name. I'm sure you do, my Reddit friend. I'm sure you do. 2. It'll be weird and could lead to future issues among them if the kids have different last names. 3. He's delusional. Rob him of his birth certificate matching his son? Good lord. Also, names are 2 yes, 1 no thing. So yes, a compromise has to be reached. Not the jerk. Hardly any kid wants to be a junior anyway. It's like alienating your son from your daughters. Not only does your husband show already now his clear favorism, but he'll even make it stand out to everyone. Naming is a 2 yes business, and if you can't agree, choose the best for the kids' relationship to one another, which is probably to let them have the same last name. The reason why I vote not the jerk instead of no jerks here is because being furious about not getting his way is really extreme and shows what he thinks about you, your opinions, and the girl's stand in the family. Not the jerk. I'm sorry, but I always think it's really weird when fathers are that fixated on their son having the exact same name. He's furious and being robbed? Please. I think you are also right on the money to consider the effects of the kids having different names. Does the son feel alienated from mom because he's the only one without her name? Do your daughters feel lesser because daddy seemingly had so much more investment in the son's name than theirs? At the end of the day, your son is already getting all of his father's name. I think it's petty and disrespectful of your husband to want to exclude even the smallest piece of yours. Not the jerk, but this is a red flag. Your husband is telling you that the son is more important than his daughters by wanting his son to be his mini-me. Your compromise is extremely valid, and then all the kids' names will be matching, which should be important to all parents. Also, this junior stuff, who wants it? It's just complicated. Papers get sent to the wrong person. It's just unnecessarily complicated. It might be a cultural thing, but I truly don't get it. And it's often on the male side, which indicated sons are supposed to be more important or something. I got lucky myself. My husband's ugly name that every firstborn son gets stayed unused. We're the proud parents of 2 daughters. You're the jerk. Welcome to 2023, where dads can't even name their son a junior without people flipping out. Hopefully, in his next marriage/family, he gets to name one of his sons a junior. Am I the jerk for telling my younger brother that I'm not his dad? I'm 19. My younger brother, let's call him Ed, in question is 6. My father, who's 49, has been in and out of our lives for the past 6 years. He was working abroad and providing for us during that time, but us kids have slowly started to forget his presence around the house. In 2021, he had a huge fight with my mother, who's 48, and decided to leave us under the guise of visiting his relative's funeral. We haven't seen him since. It's been very tough for my mother, who's tried her utmost best to make the best of such an awful situation for us kids without much help. So my siblings and I, mostly a bunch of teens, have tried our best to make things generally easier for her, including assisting in the raising up of Ed. Ed always used to call me by my name, but recently, like a few months ago, he's picked up the habit of calling me Dad. I felt very awkward at first, but after some thought, I figured it was an honest mistake and didn't pay much attention to it. It didn't stop there. Ed started calling me Dad more, whether it was in private or whether it was in front of the family. I was extremely confused. Earlier this afternoon, I picked him up from his school. When we reached home, I went to my mother and jokingly said, "This random kid has been following me the entire time. I think he's lost." We have a way of joking that I think is pretty wholesome. I'm sure he enjoys it too. Ed playfully tugged me on the arm and said, "How dare you say that? I'm your son." Now here's where I might be the jerk. I didn't want him to grow up believing that I was something I'm not, so I gently responded, "Ed, I'm not your dad. I'm your older brother, okay? We share the same mother." Ed replied, "You're my dad now, because my real dad is never coming back." Hearing that tore my heart, and I didn't know how to respond. I hugged him, but he didn't seem too happy and left. My mother pulled me aside later and told me that I shouldn't have said what I said and that I've hurt his feelings. I tried to explain that as much as I understand his feelings, I wanted him to know who we truly are to each other and didn't want to devastate him later in life. I also mentioned how awkward it made me feel. She said that maybe Ed is calling me dad not because I'm his actual father, but maybe because I'm one of the safest masculine examples he's got. Upon reflection, I'm starting to feel very guilty about what I did. I think my mother is right. Perhaps I was a little too harsh. I need some people to talk sense into me. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. While he may see you as a father figure, it's okay that you don't want the title. Social-wise, calling a 19-year-old dad and a 48-year-old mom could also be very awkward. Your mother should look into family counseling or even individual for your brother. It's a heavy load for all of you. Not the jerk. I think what you did was the right thing. It's difficult for kids that age to see their friends with their fathers and not understand why they don't have a dad. And they don't understand where babies come from and why your being their dad is not correct. He just sees you as a role model that he can look up to, and it kind of feels like he has a dad in you. Correcting him makes it so that this doesn't become a permanent thing and reminds him that you are not actually his father. Keep emphasizing that you're his big brother, and that's even better than his father, trying to put a positive spin on your relationship to him. Your mother, on the other hand, is using you as a quasi-replacement and doesn't want to deal with the bigger issues here. She definitely needs to face the reality of the situation and what it's doing to you and your siblings. Am I the jerk for sitting with my brother-in-law instead of cooking? I, 29 female, recently went on holiday with my husband, who's 32, his parents, his sister, who's 28, and her husband, Paul. I don't really get on with my husband's family, but the trip was to a country where a lot of their extended family now live, and I tagged along because my husband and I were going to another location the week after. I'm not particularly fond of Paul. He's just, but I'm a nice guy, personified. That said, it's not so obvious all the time that you can't be around him, and the whole family, except our respective spouses, dislike both of us. So there have been moments where I found myself seeking out Paul for conversation at events. On this particular day, my husband had gone to a business meeting and I stayed at the rental house. I walked my husband out and then saw Paul sitting by the pool, so I went to go sit with him. We were there for maybe 10 minutes when my sister-in-law came out and asked if I wanted to come inside and make lunch with her and my mother-in-law. I said, "No thanks, I'm not hungry," because I generally don't eat lunch unless at a restaurant and wasn't planning to eat. This seemed to annoy her for some reason and she went back inside. 5 minutes later, my mother-in-law came out and said I should come to the kitchen. I again said no thanks. I don't cook, and I'm not planning on eating, so I'm fine here. A while later, I mentioned going to get a drink, but Paul offered to get it, so I let him. When Paul came back with the drinks, he mentioned that sister-in-law and mother-in-law were mad at me, but I brushed it off. Eventually, Paul got called in for lunch, and I went out to town for a while. When I got back, I walked into all of the in-laws, telling my husband that I need to stop treating them like the help, and how I was flirting with Paul, which simply never happened. They seemed a bit uncomfortable when they realized I'd heard them, but mother-in-law insisted my husband needed to stick up for them. My husband said it's sister-in-law's choice if she wants to be a maid for her deadbeat husband, but to stop trying to force everyone else into it. Sister-in-law started crying, Paul got upset, and the parents started arguing. Eventually, my husband told everyone to let it go, which they did, but they were very standoffish for the rest of the trip, which frankly I preferred. However, I do feel bad, because I feel like future trips like this are off the table. I was speaking to my mom about it on the phone, and she said she understands where they're coming from, since in some families that's how it works. She said maybe sister-in-law was uncomfortable that she was inside cooking for her husband while he was spending time with me, but he could have gone and sat with her if he wanted to. That said, even in my family, women do usually sit together. I'm just starting to wonder if maybe the drama was partly my fault. Not the jerk. Sister-in-law and mother-in-law created all the drama when they decided to lie and attack you to your hubby. Kudos to him for knowing what's up and putting everyone in their place. You two will be happier without being forced into situations like this again. Oh gosh, Not the jerk in any way. You weren't hungry. You didn't want to eat. Who were you supposed to be in the kitchen cooking for? Everyone sucks here. The self-awareness lacking here is intense. Look, maybe it shouldn't be this way, but yeah, don't sit with brother-in-law after your sister-in-law comes and asks you to be with her. The optics here are off. You're on a family vacation. Don't care if you aren't eating lunch. You were invited in and asked to help. Go help. Is it messed up that he wasn't asked? Sure, totally. But that wasn't your reasoning. And the dude who lets his wife act like his maid got you a drink. It's not your fault, but come on. Remove yourself from the situations. That looks bad. Remove yourself from the situation and that looks bad. You denied their request for help. You did choose problematic optics of sitting alone with your brother-in-law despite being asked to go help with lunch. It's a family vacation. Even in your family, the women tend to sit together. You get it. Not really shocked they aren't your biggest fans. Basically, they probably saw you out there with your boorish brother-in-law and were like, go see if she wants to come in. And when you kept refusing, that's where it got weird. Husband buys coffee machine, upset that he has to use it. My husband loves coffee. He's the only one in the house who drinks it. Tea and coffee gives me acidity and insomnia, so I don't drink it. Recently, he bought a fancy machine that makes delicious coffee. The only problem is that the coffee trickles down drop by drop. It takes around 4 to 5 minutes to fill a tumbler, but can feel like forever if you have nothing else to do but stand there and watch it trickle down. I get the coffee machine going every morning while getting my daughter ready for school and making her breakfast. When he comes down after getting ready, his tumbler is ready to go. He leaves, then I take daughter to school, come back and work from home. So recently I had an injury that left me bedridden. Luckily, it was daughter's midterm break, so there was no pressure of getting up early to prepare her meal and taking her to school. Only thing left was the coffee. Husband says, no problem, I'll make it myself. Day 1, 2, and 3. He makes the coffee, also cleans the machine after every use. Day 4. This is too much and wasting my time. Me. Why don't you switch the machine on downstairs and then come back upstairs to get ready? We live in a duplex. Bedroom and dressing room upstairs, kitchen and living room downstairs. Also, he stopped cleaning the machine. Day 5. He's upset because he had to run up and downstairs twice to tend to his coffee. My next suggestion, move your toiletries to the downstairs washroom for a few days so you can get ready down there. I'm not comfortable with that. Well, now the only solution left is to wake up early. Day 6, 7, and 8, he wakes up early to make his coffee. He no longer cleans the machine. Day 8, evening. I'm very tired. My sleep cycle is whacked. Me. Looks like you need to make more coffee. Day 9. He is now side-eyeing me and guilt-tripping, hoping I would crawl down the stairs to make his coffee. Not happening. So he calls up the maid and tells her to start coming early to make his coffee. She's a part-time helper, and there's no way she'll come this early. Day 10, he has given up. Now he's buying his coffee from outside, and the machine remains unused. My eldest daughter refuses to babysit because she's child-free. Should I kick her out? My wife and I have 3 kids. Tina, who's 19, Jason, who's 15, and Allie, who's 14. Late last year, my sister-in-law passed unexpectedly, leaving our niece, Jenny, who's 4, orphaned. Her father is not in the picture. My wife and I, of course, agreed to take her in. It has been a huge adjustment for all 6 of us. Tina and Allie had to start rooming together. Allie is okay with this, but Tina has complained since we brought our niece home. In fact, whenever Jenny does anything typical of a 4-year-old that Tina dislikes, she will loudly and rudely comment that, "This is why I'm child-free and I will never have kids." A few weeks ago, there were big changes in our childcare coverage, and now we lack coverage for about 2.5 hours Monday through Friday. Jason and Allie both agreed to take 1 day of the week for babysitting duties. When we asked Tina to take on the other 3, she refused, stating that she is child-free and means it. I told Tina that if she won't pitch in to help the family by babysitting, then she was no longer welcome to live in our home rent-free. I told her what we would be charging her for room and board, and she had a meltdown. She did a lot of yelling and screaming, but when she realized I was serious about kicking her out if she didn't pitch in, she agreed to take on the 3 days of babysitting. Our relationship has been tense. Tina says I'm not being fair because she has to take 3 days when Jason and Allie only have to take 1 day each. I explained it's because they're still in high school and both are involved in after-school activities, while she takes college classes part-time and online while only working weekends. Also, because she is an adult and the other 2 are not. She has also called me a jerk and says I'm discriminating against her beliefs. Am I the jerk for forcing my adult daughter's hand in this? ETA, we can't really afford an outside babysitter right now. This was the reasoning behind charging my daughter room and board. I currently pay her school fees, car payment, car insurance, phone bill, and all of her groceries, health coverage, and utilities. I was charging her less in room and board than what her lifestyle costs monthly. If she doesn't want to babysit, she's free to stay here if she pays the amount we said in room and board. She would have to take on more hours at work to do so though. So, 2.5 hours a day for 3 days, a total of 7.5 hours a week, times 15 hours is $112 a week, times 4 weeks is $450 a month. So about $450 a month of babysitting in exchange for free rent, utilities, food, and whatever else you might be covering. That sounds reasonable. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. I think every so often, people have to take one for the team. You're asking an adult for 7.5 hours of work per week in return for free room and board. I think that's fair. Not the jerk. Your daughter is wrong and you know it. I'm sorry, but somewhere along the way, she became a spoiled, entitled brat if this is how she behaves. I mean, the sheer nerve of her to loudly proclaim she will remain child-free in the presence of her cousin? How is that remotely acceptable? If she doesn't want to have kids, that's her choice. It doesn't absolve her of caring for members of her family when they need it. I mean, this girl's mother passed, and your kid is making this about her freedom of thought. Please, let me get my fainting couch. Good for you for telling her to take a hike if she can't help out a reasonable amount. I mean, it's 2.5 hours, 3 times a week. Ugh, she's a jerk. Kudos for taking the kid in, but I have to say, you are the jerk in this regard. Your approach is entirely one-sided. You're deliberately ignoring your daughter's difficulties in becoming adjusted to this drastically different, brand new situation. You acknowledge that it has been a huge adjustment for all 6 of you, but Tina's struggles seem to have lower importance than your own and those of her siblings. Your ultimatum, babysit or you're out of here, was excessively harsh. You're the jerk. Please back off, hire a babysitter. This is a tough situation given your sister-in-law passed, but I'm going with you're the jerk. Your daughter is not a parent. She may be a legal adult, but that doesn't mean she's mature enough to take on a kid 3 out of 7 days of the week. You said she works the weekends and takes part-time classes, so essentially there's only 2 days that she has completely free that she's probably doing college work. It was your decision to take in this kid, and you need to make the proper arrangements. This is a guaranteed way to make sure your daughter never speaks to you after she moves out eventually. Karen tries to steal my dogs, big mistake. This happened when I was 12 years old, and I figured I'd share my experience with an entitled family who tried to steal my hunting dog. I grew up on the family farm in the middle of nowhere. We own approximately 350 acres, and we have a ridiculously long driveway, and you can't even see the house from the main road. So often, people see our dogs and they think that they're lost and pick them up. We have collars with our contact info that are always on them because of this fact. My parents are big on not hunting or removing wild animals unless they're a danger to us. They always had the mindset that we are living in their home. They were here first, and we should just respect them and be aware of our surroundings. For the most part, the wildlife leaves us and our livestock alone, other than Jacob, the black bear breaking into the grain shed, and the elk that eat the hay bales. We had a fairly large cougar who learned that our llamas made easy meals. The cougar ate all 9 of them in less than a year. The last straw was when I was walking in the horse pasture and interrupted the big cat's lunch, last llama. Luckily, one of the family dogs put himself between the cougar and I. I have no doubt if it wasn't for him, I'd not be here today. My dad decided he had to do something. He truly didn't want to use lethal methods and started researching other options. He came across a breeder who breeds hunting dogs and reached out. The breeder was extremely helpful and told my dad that most cougars have had some kind of run-in with hunting dogs, so they won't be as bold. So we bought a hunting dog, after doing lots of research on the breed and making sure that we could handle one. Gus Timberchopper was his name, and he was flown in from Virginia to Canada and quickly became a valuable family member. As everyone knows with any hound, the nose goes down and the ears turn off. Gus becomes a favorite of all our neighbors as his wandering helps with predators and livestock. Life was peaceful other than a few trips to the shelter to pick up Gus. The peace would not last long though. Enter entitled family. They saw our 5 dogs chilling on our property and decided they were abandoned or lost. Not the case. My brother and I were playing in the creek and the dogs had wandered away not too far. but far enough that the family didn't see us. The entitled family then pulled off the road and got out of the vehicle and started trying to coax the dogs into their van. 3 of our dogs ran back to the creek where we were playing. Our Pyrenees, Togo, and Gus stayed. The entitled dad somehow caught Gus and started dragging him to their van. Gus started to freak out. He started to bark, alerting me that something wasn't right. So I went to go see what was happening. Well, 12-year-old me saw some random guy trying to get Gus in his van, and the entitled kids and mom were gushing over how cute he was and how he will be the perfect dog for them. I wasn't too nervous, as this happens often. People see the dogs, no house, and they think they're lost or someone dumped them, and try to help the owners by taking them to a shelter or vet, then often call or stop by to apologize for causing any inconvenience. I yelled out, "Hey, that dog isn't lost, he's with us." The entitled kids started to scream that they wanted the dog and they deserved the dog. Then they burst into uncontrollable sobs. The entitled mom asked me to come closer so we don't have to yell. I politely declined and said again that Gus was ours and asked the dad to please stop. Entitled dad grunted and tried to pick up Gus again. Gus ended up biting the guy on his hand. He didn't break the skin, it was more of a warning nip. The entitled dad let go and Gus came running back to me. Entitled dad looked furious and started to walk towards me and Gus, yelling that I shouldn't own dogs because clearly we don't train or properly care for them, and how much better of a home they could offer him. I was starting to panic because this guy looked so mad and he was raging that he would teach my dog proper manners. I'm backing away while holding onto Gus's collar. Togo quickly stood in front of me. I was begging the entitled dad to back off and to leave. Entitled dad said something along the lines of, "I'm taking this dog to teach you a lesson. If you don't look after your pets, they'll find a better home." I told him to stop, as Togo is very protective of me and my brother. And while he has lots of training, as he started showing signs of being too aggressive with people, we didn't want him to bite someone unprovoked. Entitled dad did stop for a moment, but the entitled mom and kids were screaming that they wanted this dog. It had to be this dog. Togo gave entitled dad lots of warnings, low growls, and bared teeth, lunging and snapping. Entitled dad tried to grab Gus by the collar again and ended up knocking me down. Togo latched onto the entitled dad's arm and started to shake his head and yank the guy off of his feet. One of the other dogs, she belonged to my uncle, came after I screamed and grabbed entitled dad by his pant leg, ripping it apart. My brother also joined because he heard me scream. I got him to take Gus and told him to run home and to get dad. Togo wouldn't listen when I told him to let go. Entitled kids and mom tried to get out to help. Thankfully, they listened when I told them to stop. Entitled dad was yelling to call the dog off and how he would see it that all of our dogs would be put down and that we would never be allowed to own another one again. At this point, I was scared, angry, and overwhelmed. I started to cry. I thought that Togo would be put down for sure and that if entitled dad took us to court, he'd somehow get Gus. Togo let go of his arm but made it clear that entitled dad was to stay on the ground. Anytime he tried to stand, Togo would knock him back down and growl in his face. My dad came racing down the driveway, ready for war. Entitled family started saying how Togo attacked unprovoked and that I misunderstood what they were doing. My dad told the family that the police and an ambulance will be arriving and that they best stay put, and if they decided to drive away, that he has pictures of the dad and vehicle and will press every kind of charges he legally can. My dad called some neighbors to come help if things went sideways. The police and ambulance arrive. Entitled dad needs stitches in his arm. They told the police that they thought the dogs weren't mine and that I was lying, and the kids want a dog so bad, but they don't want to pay for one. They saw ours and thought that they were strays. None of our dogs look like strays. They're all well-fed, brushed, and spoiled. Entitled dad then said that when I told him to stop or he could get hurt, he took it as I was threatening him, and that's why he didn't listen. Him and his wife were demanding that Togo be put down immediately and that we are animal hoarders who need to be charged and banned from owning any kind of animal. The police and paramedics told him he was very lucky. Togo is a guardian dog, and they're bred to be protectors. Togo was only trying to protect me. Entitled dad didn't care. He took us to court. Entitled dad got 34 stitches in his arm. In the courthouse, entitled mom came to my parents and said she had an offer. If they accepted, they'd drop the lawsuit. They wanted us to give them Gus. Dad told her no way. In the end, thanks to the game cameras Dad had in various places, we had footage. The judge was less than amused, as entitled family made it sound like I ordered my dog to attack them when they just wanted to play with the dog. Judge pointed out that a 12-year-old girl versus a 40-something-year-old man was not a fair fight and that my dogs just evened the odds. We did have to isolate Togo and made sure that our dogs had microchips and their tattoos were legible. Dad also decided that he'd fence off my brother and I favorite places so that the dogs can't wander. I do wonder sometimes about entitled family, and I have 2 questions I'd love to ask. After all the expenses, wouldn't it have been cheaper to just buy a dog or adopt rather than trying to steal one? Don't bother me unless it's an emergency. This morning, I got into my car and realized I left my headlights on. Thankfully, modern technology meant it had automatically switched off when the key was removed, but it reminded me of a time where this wasn't so. Many years ago, I was working one of my first jobs in a little cafe, nearing the end of my training period. It was a quiet day, perfect to put the newbie on with only one experienced staff member. The experienced staff member called in sick. Boss had to come in and cover, until Sue could come in early. Boss wanted to use the time on site to do paperwork out the back. I'll be in here if you have any questions. I very annoyingly had a lot of questions. How to avoid an incorrect transaction, where to find more special paper for the credit card machine, what to do when the coffee grinder stopped working. Finally, boss said, "I'm busy. Don't bother me unless it's an emergency. Let me know when Sue is here." Shyly, I replied, "That's what I came to tell you. Sue just arrived." "Great. Any more questions? Ask her." Sue took over the coffee area and got me on restocking, clearing tables and emptying the bins, and other necessary grunt work. I went out to the outside bins through the little staff parking area and saw my boss's old car there with the headlights on. I went back to my boss's office. "Boss? Is it an emergency?" he snapped. "Not to me," I replied. "Then go away." I left quickly. I went to tell Sue instead. "Sue," then I changed my mind. Boss doesn't want to be disturbed unless it's an emergency, so I'm supposed to ask you if I have any more questions. Sue and I worked pleasantly until the end of my shift a few hours later. As I gathered my things to leave, Boss ran by me, knocking into me a bit. Without turning around to see if I was okay, Boss said, "Sorry, I'm in a rush." I slowed down to see what happened next, getting out my brick of a phone to text my mother I was on my way home. I could hear my boss losing it. "OP!" Oh no. Boss realized what I was going to tell him earlier. I was in trouble. "Can you bring your car in and give me a jump start? My battery is flat." Only a few cars could fit, so only senior staff and management could park there. I walked here. I live 10 minutes up the hill. I raced off before Boss could blame me. The next time I was on shift with Sue, I asked what happened to Boss. Headlights left on, got a flat battery. Boss tried to jumpstart it with my car, but it didn't work. Had to call a taxi. Funny that neither of us noticed the lights were on when we walked by it. And I realized, of course, she had to have seen it when she walked in. I can only imagine why she didn't say anything either. Am I the jerk for calling my brother-in-law a joke of a father in front of his family? My sister, Rachel, was married to Daniel, 40 male, for 8 years. They were high school sweethearts and they tied the knot shortly after their graduation. They had a daughter together, Alice, who's 16, who was Rachel's entire world. Rachel ended up diagnosed with cancer when she was only a few weeks away from delivery, and after Alice was born, she started chemo ASAP. It ended up being treatment-resistant and aggressive, and Rachel ended up passing by the time Alice was 2. Daniel emotionally checked out completely. He decided to take a job opportunity abroad, and he left Alice and mine in my wife's custody. At first, he said it was temporary, that he just needed to get things in order before Alice came to live with him. But eventually it was obvious that it would be much longer. He signed his rights over to us, and we've been raising her alongside our 3 sons. As far as the boys are concerned, Alice is their big sister, and as far as Alice is concerned, they're her little brothers. Daniel got remarried, and he had 2 daughters. Alice wasn't invited to the wedding. We only found out about it after his brother mentioned it to us. Daniel does send money for her, and they write letters back and forth like he and Rachel used to do in school. I know that there has to be some sort of part of him that loves his daughter, but it's hard to believe it considering how he's practically abandoned her after Rachel passed. Daniel's brother Wes has helped out a bit with Alice too. She'll go over to his house at least once a month to see him, his wife, and their kids. A few days ago, I was taking Alice over, and when we got there, we saw that Daniel and his wife and kids were there. I was ready to get back in the car and take Alice home, but Daniel saw us and came outside. He came up to Alice and tried to give her a hug, but she stepped back from him. He looked hurt, and when he asked why she didn't want to give her dad a hug, I snapped. I asked, How could he seriously stand there and refer to himself as her dad when all he's ever been to her is a pen pal? I called him a joke of a father and a sorry excuse for a man. His wife and their daughters overheard what I said. When Alice and I got back home, Wes called me and left a message saying that he agrees that Daniel hasn't been the best father to Alice, but I didn't need to tell him that in front of his wife and their kids. Daniel feels the same way. I did apologize to Alice for disparaging her father, but she just shrugged and said it would have only been disparaging if it wasn't true. My wife said she probably would have done worse if she had been there, but part of me does feel that I could have said it out of earshot of his kids. I'd say your heroic behavior in stepping up as a father figure for 14 years makes up for one slightly jerk comment, and the only reason it was a jerk comment was because it was in front of his kids. Not the jerk. They'll understand once they're older. Not allowed to remove my neck brace? Okay. Years ago, I was in a bad car accident. An older man turned left in front of me at an intersection and T-boned me. Ambulances were called. I was put on a backboard with a neck brace and brought to the hospital where I was deposited on the gurney in a hallway as there were no rooms available at the time. I laid there for quite a while waiting to be seen. My injuries weren't bad, basically just got banged around and bruised up, so I was okay with the waiting. But I was in pain and laying on my back was very uncomfortable. I didn't think there was anything wrong with my neck. The only pain I felt was due to the darn neck brace digging into the bottom of my skull, and I really wanted to lay in a different position. Not only to alleviate some of the pain in the rest of my body, hopefully, but also because I was parked right under a light that was blaring in my eyes the whole time. So I started taking off my neck brace. A nurse spotted me doing this and ran over very upset with me and told me I had to keep the neck brace on. I tried telling her my neck was fine, but she was adamant that I not remove the brace until the doctor had examined me, which I get. I'm guessing at the very least it goes very much against protocol, and at the very worst, it would have been a huge liability if I took the brace off and there was something wrong. Plus, I didn't want to upset the nurse or be one of those patients, so I begrudgingly complied, even though I thought it was overkill. I tried to reposition myself as best I could to the least painful position, not very successfully, unfortunately. However, the darn light blaring directly down was driving me crazy, even when I closed my eyes. Finally, out of frustration, I took the blanket that was over me, pulled it up more, and threw it over my head. Finally, no more light in my eyes. Bliss. I just laid there trying to block the pain and daydream to pass the time, wondering how long I would be there for. Not too long after, I hear what sounds like a bit of commotion and someone saying something about a deceased patient in the hallway. I was like, oh man, that's scary. I get that there are no rooms available, but to leave a deceased patient just laying out for everyone to see? I thought that was uber creepy. Suddenly, the same nurse that gave me crap about the neck brace pulls the blanket off of my head, scaring me, and she starts yelling at me that I'm not allowed to put the blanket over my head, and what was I doing? It was then that I realized the deceased patient they were talking about was me. I said, oh crap, I'm so sorry. I just wanted the light out of my eyes, and I can't move my head with this brace on. To say the nurse was not impressed would be an understatement, but she did find a room to move me and position me not under the light, which I thanked her very much for. She just gave me a look and walked away. Sorry. As someone who spent years working in the ER, this has gotta be one of my favorite stories we've read. The lack of rooms, uncomfortable patients, rude nurses, and deceased patients just lying around. Something tells me this was an HCA-owned hospital. I'm the reason they haven't fixed the lock in 20 years. I work in downtown Denver and had a couple of hours before an appointment, so I decided to go get lunch. I'll occasionally pop into one of the places I used to work at because I know the food is really good. Every time I go into this one place, I remember what happened to me one time 20 years ago. I was having a beer and the bar was slow, so I was chatting with the bartender and telling the story to him. 20 years ago, I was a server at this particular place and they had a no cell phone policy. Yes, we had cell phones 20 years ago. You had to leave it in your locker or get written up. I already had one write-up, so I put mine in my locker and went about greeting my first table. It was slow and I had the urge to go to the bathroom, so I went before the rush would hit. I washed my hands and tried to open the door and nothing. The lock had broken. I started knocking on the door. Now the employee bathroom was located back by the lockers, kind of tucked off in a corner of the kitchen, away from the line where people would be. So I start pounding on the door. Anytime I heard a noise, I'd pound on the door and yell. But the noise of a busy kitchen and lunch rush drowned me out. 15 minutes goes by, still no one. Another 10 minutes, now I'm wondering how I'm supposed to get out of here and how long am I going to be stuck in here. Then I heard a noise close by and I started yelling and pounding on the door. Someone had gone to their locker for cigarettes. They heard me. They told me I had been triple set and they couldn't find me and the manager was furious with me. Of course, I'm relaying my situation to them. They get the manager who comes over and tells me to open the door. Duh, I can't. They had to track down the maintenance guy who was another 20 minutes away, but luckily the hinges were on the outside of the door and he was able to get me out. By now, I'd been in there for the better part of an hour. First thing the manager said to me, they said with an angry voice, "Why didn't you just call us with your cell phone?" Of course, they also had to check the lock to make sure I wasn't making the story up, and I wasn't. My first table was understanding and laughed about it with me, but left me no tip. I didn't get sat at another table that day. So I finished telling the bartender this story. I go to use the restroom, and when I came back, he's confirmed with the GM the reason the employee bathroom has a sliding bolt latch instead of a lock on the door handle is so an employee can't get locked in there. The GM never knew who that person was though, as they had taken over years after I had left. They both bought me a beer. Am I the jerk for refusing to put my fiance's daughter on my airline benefits? I, male 31, have two siblings, a sister who's 23 and a brother who's 37. Me and my siblings are all very close. I'm especially really close to my little sister, Shannon. Me and my siblings have the same mom, but different dads. Me and my brother know our fathers, while my younger sister, her dad walked out on her at 4, and she knows nothing about him. Also, my mom passed from cancer 5 years ago. My sister always jokes that she's an orphan, but she suffered some serious depression since our mom passed, and it's been challenging, but she's so much better. I'm a higher up at an airline, and I decided to put her on my benefits, which allows her to fly for free, and now she travels all the time and is living out her early 20s, and I can't be any more happier. Her goal is to visit places our mom could never go to because she had us so young. Recently, I got engaged to my fiance, Taylor, who's 29, and Taylor has a daughter who's 6, Maddie, and Maddie's dad isn't really in her life, and I took on the father figure role, and I have no issue with that. Since me and Taylor are getting married, I told her she can be added to my flight benefits as a wife, and she brought up, what about Maddie? And I told her she couldn't be added given I only have 4 people on my account, my dad, my brother, my sister, and now Taylor. I told her I hit the max of people on my account, and she wasn't pleased with that. She recommended I take off Shannon because she doesn't actually work, and it's time for her to get an actual job and pay for her own flight tickets. I took very much offense to that. She's right, my sister doesn't work, but that's because she's in school and she lives off the inheritance my mom left us, so it's not like a freeloader. I told her she's being ridiculous because I get 8 buddy passes a year, and if me, her, and Maddie wanted to go on a trip, she can still come, but we'll just have to pay at most $60 a ticket. She told me I'm being a jerk for not including her daughter in my flight benefits, when really, I don't get how, given her daughter is in school the majority of the year and will most likely not use the benefits as much as my sister uses it now. So, am I the jerk? Edit. Why I don't want to remove brother or father is, my dad is a senior in his retirement and I want him to have the option to travel when he feels comfortable to. And as for my older brother, he has a wife and kids, and since he's on the account, he can fly for free and his family can use buddy passes. If he's off the account, he can't fly without me or use a buddy pass because he isn't on the account. It's hard to explain, but if he's not on the account, he can't use buddy passes with his wife without me being present. Let's break this down. Your fiance, the woman you love so much till death do you part, her daughter that loves you enough to consider you a father. What part of this is hard for you? In the future, if you have a biological kid with your fiance, will you want that one on the list? Are you seriously hearing yourself? Maybe put your dad on the buddy list system instead. How often does he fly? Now, to be fair, I see the logic in your thinking. I do, really. How often will you need to fly the kid places, being in school and all? But the same could be said for your sister, who is also in school most of the year. Maybe talk it out. The whole group all talk together. Explain your views and hear theirs. Actually hear them out and come to an actual agreement. I guarantee this will work itself out when you do. You're the jerk, but there's hope for you yet. My question is, are you sure you want to marry her? Yeah, sounds to me like she's showing you her true colors. These are some major red flags, and you deserve so much better. Oh, Reddit boy, you're really catching on to the Reddit lingo, aren't you? We've been reading these stories every day for the past 5 years. I literally hear this stuff in my sleep at this point. My neighbor is hoarding animals and it's ruining my quality of life. Should I report her? This lady moved into the neighborhood a couple years ago and turned her very small backyard into an overcrowded hoarding situation with way too many animals. Now she's turning me into a Karen. So for context, it's me, my husband, and our dog. Nice, quiet, residential neighborhood. House next to me has a small farm. Chickens, roosters, ducks, turtles, rabbits, and cats that are extremely invasive and have taken over my yard and have destroyed everything in it and use it as a bathroom all over. We have a 1-year-old boxer who now can't play in our fenced-in backyard. The neighbor's cats are always using it as a bathroom, and when I try and talk to the neighbor, her response is that I must firmly tell them that they're doing a bad thing and then tell them to never ever come in my yard again, as it's my responsibility to keep them out. Like, what? One of her cats did test positive for worms, as animal control made her get them tested and share the results. And because she won't keep them out of our yard, instead of letting our dog go out to play and use the bathroom, she now has to be leashed, and we hit the dog park 2 times a day. Not complaining about the dog park, but some days I don't want to scan the yard for cat crap and I just want to stay home. I'm also afraid my dog will catch and hurt the animals. She's not vicious, just a boxer that likes to chase and jump. One of her chickens decided to escape and went to the bathroom all over my car. It scratched up the hood and cost about $1,100 to get it fixed. She keeps the duck inside at night and puts it out at 5 a.m. when it starts quacking nonstop until 8ish when she brings it in. The roosters go off all hours of the night and day. So now I get up at 5 a.m. every day. I guess I might as well take up jogging. I work at home. The duck and roosters are so bad that I moved my office to the other side of my house so I can work in peace. But this duck roams the neighborhood and has taken up residence in my driveway. If I was a paranoid person, I would think he was stalking me. I love animals, and I'm not a get-off-my-lawn type of person, but the invasiveness of her animals and her lack of responsibility is driving me nuts. I've already sent some pictures and a formal complaint to animal control where they came out and they fined her. Code enforcement handles the other animals, and they also came out and made her get rid of the roosters and said she can only have a total of 6 birds, so she had to get rid of chickens too. Today my husband gets home and there's a turtle in the driveway. I ask her if it's hers, and sure enough, she said yes. And so are the 4 in your backyard. Totally not mad about the turtles, just that every day it's something new that escapes her house. I'm ready to call animal control and code enforcement again, and a real estate lawyer. We can't use our yard. I can't open windows on the very few nice days we have. I can't sleep in on my days off. My dog can't play in her yard. I can't talk to her anymore because of the nonsense coming out of her mouth. Even animal control said she has issues and code enforcement is tired of her, but also not willing to do anything. Set up cameras outside. If you had video or pictures of the chickens on your car, take her to small claims court for that $1,100. She doesn't lose sleep making your life heck. Return the favor. Call animal control, call zoning, call a lawyer. You have a right to enjoy your yard, and she has an obligation to keep her animals under control. My boyfriend demands my friends and family call him Dr. Jones instead of by his first name. My boyfriend, who's 32, is a doctor. I met him through my dad back when we were traveling, and after we started dating, he started coming over to my hometown to visit. When I introduced him to my family and friends, I told them his full name, then occupation, then mentioned the other stuff like age and hometown, etc. All good until months later when he started complaining about my family and friends referring to him by his first name and not putting doctor before. I found this strange. I told him that's his professional title, but as a society, we use first names, nicknames, etc. He said he can't help but feel annoyed, especially considering that these people don't know him well. But it's been 8 months. He even said once we're married or engaged, then they can start referring to him using his first name. Recently, he started correcting whenever my friends or family call him by his name. His tone becomes aggressive, and then he goes on a long lecture about how they should put doctor before mentioning his name. It became exhausting because my friends and family can't understand his strange hang-up, and he keeps picking fights with them about it. Last night, we were visiting my parents, and my dad called him Justin instead of Dr. Justin. My boyfriend started arguing with him, which caused a huge fight in the house, and we ended up leaving. In the car, he went off on me, saying I'm letting friends and family disrespect him continually by letting them call him by just his first name. I told him he was at fault here and he was being unreasonable because what he's expecting is bizarre. He said he takes pride in his profession and that he sacrificed so much to get to where he is today, and my family and friends literally lose nothing if they respect his wishes. He called me an enabler and said that siding with them paints me in a bad light and advised me to step up and take a stand. But again, I thought he was overreacting and being hostile for no reason. We got home and he shut me down and refused to speak to me. Mom called me later and we talked a bit. Today he's gone completely radio silence, but the look on his face is telling. Am I the jerk? Edit. We don't have anyone who's a doctor in the family or friend groups, but we know for certain that we don't use people's professional titles all the time when addressing them, especially not people we have a relationship with. I don't understand how me and my family are offending him. He is choosing this hill to die on apparently. I smell a narcissist, not the jerk. He has a God complex, which is not an uncommon trait in doctors. Not saying they all have it, but it's not uncommon either. He's super full of himself. I can't imagine dating someone or even being friends or acquaintances with someone who insisted on being called doctor in a social setting. Am I the jerk for telling my husband's nurse that she doesn't get to dictate who is and isn't allowed in my home? My husband, who's 36, has been in the hospital for weeks. He just got discharged, but he needs home care. We got him a nurse to be able to monitor his medical devices. His nurse comes over to handle stuff like catheter, cannula insertions, and medication intake. I've noticed she's been acting a bit rude and overstepping by trying to tell me when to enter my bedroom where my husband is staying, or when the kids get to come in. I already told her how I felt about her attitude, and she claimed she was just doing her job, making sure that my husband is getting enough rest. Yesterday, my parents came over to visit my husband since they had been planning to come for a while, but couldn't find time. I opened the door for them and led them towards the bedroom. The minute we walked in, the nurse started redirecting us outside. I was confused. I asked what was she doing, and she told me she was in the middle of removing my husband's catheter, and this wasn't a time for a visit. I nearly laughed, but she forced us out and shut the door. I was fuming. I had my parents go into the living room, then came back and started arguing with her. She told me that my husband was in a vulnerable state and needed privacy, and she, as his nurse, simply provided it to him and had my visitors go wait outside. I told her this is my home, my bedroom, and those were my parents coming over to see my husband and check in on him, so they were his visitors as well. She told me it wasn't the right time for a visit, but I told her that she's in my home, and she was overstepping by trying to dictate who is and who isn't allowed in to see my husband. I told her I'd report her for this attitude, and she kept saying that she was just trying to do her job, and told me to go ask my husband about how he felt about having people see him in such a state. I asked her to leave. Then after my parents were done with their visit, I tried to talk to my husband. He told me he did feel like his privacy was being violated, and that I was being too harsh on the nurse. I told him that my parents were worried sick and wanted to see him. He said this wasn't the right time and basically backed the nurse up. We got into an argument over this, and then he told me to let it go and let the nurse do her job. But I said that she keeps acting aggressively and like I was some outsider in my own home. Am I the jerk in this situation, or is she really overstepping? You're the jerk. Her job is to provide care and to advocate for your husband. The fact that he sided with her should tell you that you are out of line. Having a catheter replaced is always done behind closed doors. They kick you and your folks out of the hospital room for that, so her insisting on his privacy is normal. And you're acting like it was some huge inconvenience and waited ages. It was a few minutes, so chill. Your folks will understand. She may be abrupt with what she's doing, or she may be having to be forceful because you're not listening. If the nurse says, now isn't a good time for the kids or whoever to visit, don't say, whatever, this is my home. Listen to her. It's not just your bedroom, it's his convalescence room too. He needs time, space, and privacy, and a good nurse will ensure he gets those even if a wife is being a little too entitled. And your husband agrees with her. Then why are you even asking? You're the jerk. The nurse is being the bad guy, so your husband doesn't have to be. Any half-decent nurse will take the fall by throwing out anyone the patient doesn't want to see. You're the jerk, OP, and calm down. As a nurse, I can 100% confirm this is the case. She's asking you to leave to protect the privacy of her patient. That is her job. No man wants to go through a painful procedure like this in front of their in-laws. Get a grip. This isn't about you. Drop your attitude and be there for him. You're the jerk. Medical professional here. The job of the nurse is to take care of her patient's needs, not yours. So yeah, you're the jerk. She wasn't dictating who could see your husband, but when they could see him. Also, if the nurse is telling you your husband needs more rest, it's probably because he said something to her. If he was in the hospital for weeks and still needs a catheter, etc., he probably does need a ton of rest. Maybe you do too. Having a husband who's sick and you having to take care of your kids alone is a lot of stress. I am hoping you can have someone watch him and the kids for a bit and go have some time with your friends. Caretakers need care too. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.